Unfortunately, 6/21. This is the opt-out of the AUD. Lori Witten, our Director of Development Services. Sorry for delay. Welcome. We have a forum, so you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. At the last meeting, you had a discussion on the accessory dwelling units regarding the Public Act 2129. Just as a quick summary, the purpose of that in that Public Act is to promote alternative, less expensive, and equitable housing. It could be affordable, but we are actually exempt from the affordable housing statute. It was really started from a group called Desegregate Connecticut, and they were just trying to promote more fair housing throughout the Connecticut. So you did have a couple specific questions at the last meeting. The first one was, how often does the town receive applications for, or has the PZC approved an accessory dwelling unit or an ADU? And the short answer to that is never, because we don't allow them. So, and the same question for accessory apartments, which we do allow, and we call them in-law apartments. We usually get about one per year. We actually were kind of surprised when we looked back at that we didn't have more. But so the accessory dwelling unit or accessory apartments, accessory apartments or in-law apartments are basically for in-laws or relatives. They're temporary housing only. They require a special permit from the Planning and Zoning Commission. The maximum apartment size is 400 to 750 square feet. And the minimum lot size that you could put one of these on is 17,000 square feet. Now, these are usually attached to or somehow within the same house. So there's usually, you close the door and lock it, and the units are separate, but they're still within the same unit or the same structure. Because it's family, so, nobody's really trying to lock their family out. Well, we hope not, anyway. So, your second question was, what is the effect of if the town does not completely opt out? And basically, if the town does not opt out, we essentially would be bound to include the regulations as proposed in the Act. No regulation would be stricken because there's nothing in our regulations that are counter to these regulations. The accessory dwelling unit acts as a permanent structure. It is bound by, full fire and building code regulations, where the temporary structures, apartments are not. Maximum size of about 1,000 square feet, or 30% of the primary structure of the residential zone. It is considered permanent housing, and there is no minimum lot size, but it does need to meet the zoning setbacks and coverage, so the bulk and area requirements. And they have also included a maximum of 1 parking space per accessory dwelling unit. So does anybody have any questions at this point?
Councilor Speraza.
Yes, sir.
Lord, it's such an important vote. I want to make sure that I understand it, and I think I do, but I just want to take a minute. Starting at the beginning, you said that we're exempt from the low housing requirements. Now, isn't that because we already meet and surpass that in town?
That is correct. We surpassed the 10% affordable housing units in town. We're actually up just below 13% right now.
So we've not only met the bar the state has set, we've exceeded it currently.
That is correct.
Number two, the purpose that we have planning and zoning and special use permits, and tell me if I'm wrong with this, isn't their primary function to ensure that what additions are put on property, they look out for certain things like setbacks, so you can't build something right up against your neighbor's house. You have to have so much space, the water impact that might happen, all these different things. And more importantly, during these sessions, doesn't the public have a right to come and speak for or against these projects? Is that all true?
All of that is true.
Okay, so if we don't opt out, people will no longer have to abide by setbacks. They will no longer have the ability to come and have a public hearing because this is going to say it's just going to happen. We give up total local control. Did I say that correctly?
Well, yes, kind of.
Okay.
So they would not have to have the public hearing. They would still have to abide by the
building codes, right.
No, by the setbacks and coverage.
Okay.
But it would just be by right with the zoning permit. So there wouldn't be a public hearing, and you would not be able to come and speak in favor or against
Even
it.
if it was my neighbor?
Correct.
Yeah, so you take the voice away from people with that.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Mangini, and Councilor Riley, and Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Thank you, Lori, for coming before us. I appreciate it. And thank you for answering these questions. I have a couple of questions, concerns. First, I think this is, well, premature to vote on this currently. And getting to the heart of what Councilman Sprazza just said, not giving people the voice or the right to speak is totally against my grain. But in addition to that, if this is infrequent, why are we addressing it to begin with? And then my second part of that question, if the Planning and Zoning Commission is going to be rewriting regulations, why don't we wait until we get to that juncture before the council looks at these other issues? And then looking at some of the answers that you've provided, for example, on number 2, if the town doesn't opt out, an ADU could be placed on a parcel where the single family, provided conditions for bulk and area requirements are met. I'm not sure I understand that exactly. But, it's confusing to me. And then also, when you're talking about the last paragraph on August 5th, the Planning and Zoning Commission exercised discretion to opt out due to, and second sentence, lack of predictability with expected backyard privacy. We're talking about quiet enjoyment, is what I'm interpreting that as, quiet enjoyment. But how can you predict the lack of quiet enjoyment? It's unpredictable. I mean, people have parties all the time in their backyards. The minute you call a cop, the party stops. So, I mean, I think that's a fluid statement right there. So, again, I appreciate you responding to all these questions, but a couple of the sticking points for me, and I'm just going to be perfectly open about it, is the fact that it's infrequent. Planning and Zoning hasn't done the rewriting. And I think most importantly for me, if people aren't going to have a voice in the fashion of the public hearing or otherwise, that's just not fair. But thank you. I appreciate your time.
Councilor Riley, and Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Do you want me to respond to those
Oh, I'm sorry.
questions?
I figured you were. Yeah, go ahead.
It's up to-
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I know.
Respond.
The Planning and Zoning is the one that decided to go forward with the opt-out. I do believe that we have until 2023, but,
I think it's January 1, 2022,
Yeah.
actually. That's why.
well,
It's
I'm
12.
not,
No, I think it's January 1, 2022.
so that, it's very
It's 2022.
unclear in the act.
Sorry.
I agree that during the rewrite that we would certainly look at the accessory dwelling units as a permitted use, but with regulations and guidance, not probably by right. I can't guarantee that it won't be by right because I'm not the one that will approve these, but I think that they'll have a little bit more restrictions than by right, and probably a public hearing is my guess. The infrequency is for the in-law apartments. The reason that we don't have a number for the accessory dwelling units is because they're not actually permitted. It almost is like allowing a second dwelling unit on a single-family lot. So, and we do allow up to 4plexes on some residential lots. So, the Bulkin area, when you referred to number 2, the maximum size is 1,000 square feet with some restrictions and zoning setbacks and coverage. So it still has to abide by the existing bulk and area requirements, regardless. So one of the concerns that I had was that, for instance, in the Thompsonville section, our coverage there is up in the 30, 40, 50, 60% coverage, where most of the rest of the town residential area is 20%. And if somebody could just by right put on every single family property in Thompsonville another dwelling unit, I think that we might have some issues. The density might increase. We actually will probably have some utility issues. And those were some concerns of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Did I get that? Oh, the predictability. Part of zoning is to provide predictability of what you can use your property and what your neighbor could use your property as. So if you're buying a single-family house next to another single-family house, you kind of think, well, I'm only buying it next to a single-family dwelling, not a single-family dwelling with another house as an accessory dwelling unit. And as a planner, I think that we absolutely need to have permit these accessory dwelling units, but I think it needs to be done in the proper fashion. So,
Sorry, Councilor Riley, and then Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Okay, so
good she is.
for lot coverage, if the house and the other buildings are already at the max coverage or close to it, sorry, the feedback's kind of tripping me out here. Hold on. So if it's close to it or already met the whole coverage, then they are not allowed to do the accessory building unit, or they can build up to that percentage, or does it like start all over again and you get 1,000 square feet?
No, it would be based on the existing coverage
Okay.
prior to the accessory dwelling unit being added. So they couldn't exceed the maximum coverage for the site with the new unit.
Okay. And then, so let's just say we didn't opt out, and then the state decided to change this regulation that they already wrote. Would we then be able to have another opportunity to opt out, or are we like locked in for good if we don't opt out?
Defer that to legal, actually. But quite honestly, I think that that would be a new act, and we'd have to look at it on its own surface. So,
Okay. And then just to be 100% clear, if we opt out of this, it will still keep the ability of us, of residents, to have a public hearing on the situation.
if we opt out of this,
Yeah.
currently, you will still require a public hearing to have an in-law apartment. We still don't allow the accessory dwelling units,
Right.
but I do believe that we will permit them under certain circumstances.
Okay. And do you have a time frame of when a regulation might be written regarding this?
Our complete rewrite is hopefully going to be done in spring of 2023, or 22, not 23.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Perfect. Thank you, I appreciate it.
No problem.
Deputy Mayor Suzak, then Councilor Crisati.
Okay, so I guess my thing is if we do not opt out and these units go into single-family lots, are there additional utilities brought in? Is there now another electric, another sewer, another whatever that home needs for utilities, or are they just an extension of the primary dwelling?
I believe it could be either. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay, no, that's okay. So for me, I feel that if we don't opt out, then we are not allowing our planning and zoning to look at how our community is structured to put these, auxiliary units in places where it won't be a taxing situation for utilities or will change the whole character of a neighborhood. Because people are always very conscious of when they're buying a home, what is the expectation of what you're going to have there? And if you read your local zoning laws, you would know that. But when the state takes over and allows or underwrites the town zoning, it always is very controversial. I mean, look at the siting commission for solar. We allow solar, but nobody seems to want to put solar where we allow it. They would rather go to the state and have the state override anything that we have. And that, for me, I listen, hour on end of that. And I think it's important for us to opt out of this and take care of it the way we can take care of it best for Enfield. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Crisati, then Councilor Sakala.
Hi, Lori. How are you?
Hi, good.
Thank you for answering the questions that we presented to you. I'm looking at like the last chapter or the last paragraph that you had written. In order to address issues of equitable and alternative housing, okay? And that's very important, because when I look at a lot of the reason people put these in-law apartments on, they are for maybe elderly, disabled children, disabled adults, that families have to do this. It's like a multicultural alternative type of housing for people. I'm against having like separate dwellings, but if they're attached to the house, to me, that's something that could be equitable for people. Now, housing has to be fair for everybody, okay? And I don't have an issue. There's one issue. If I knew what the exact plans, because you're saying that you're going to be rewriting the zoning laws, I would feel a heck of a lot more comfortable seeing what I'm actually going to be, how things are going to change because you're opting out.
Right.
Have you even discussed that yet? Have you changed that yet? And here we are, we're voting on something that you don't really have to act on until 2023, and we're in 2021, and it just seems that you just didn't okay, a group of people came together and said, oh, we want to opt out of it. Not that I'm totally disagreeing with it. I am not totally disagreeing with it. I would feel comfortable if I knew what the regulations are going to be before we opt out. That's my whole point. The other thing in regard to this law is the required training and certification. Okay? They're adopt requirements for planning and zoning commissions to be trained. Commissioners will undergo 4 hours of training every other year, including at least 1 hour concerning affordable and fair housing policies. And then the zoning enforcement official also has to become certified. Mm-hmm. Was that taking into consideration why we want to opt out?
I will say that
I just want to know if that was just...
that was not necessarily considered as a primary consideration. However, when the planning and zoning decided to opt out, which was a unanimous vote back in August,
Yeah?
they just decided that they just wanted to move forward with it. As I think that they're thinking that the opt out was by the January 1st, 22. But their reasoning was because of overtaxing utilities, as was discussed earlier. The lack of predictability, which is also one of your concerns. Drainage issues. A lot of the subdivisions were created in wetlands, and that could always be a concern. If everybody decides to build out to their maximum coverage, we could have some issues traffic and on-street parking, and again, the lack of
No, no,
oversight.
I get that,
What-
because
what
you've
the re-
only had since 2017, only six or seven
Right.
units that
Right.
were built up. Once again, I'm just going to go back and say, I would feel comfortable, not that I'm totally against everything that's
Yeah.
going on, but I would feel a heck of a lot more comfortable if I knew what the new zoning regs are, and then I could make a
Right.
vote on it.
I can't tell you what they are.
Especially if you haven't even discussed what was going to be in the new zoning regulations.
I think that what we have discussed is that we should address it and prepare for it and allow it, but
Right.
by our guidance, not the state's.
Yeah, no, you know,
And,
and like I said, there are some parts that I
Yeah.
agree with,
Uh,
and then
we- you know,
there
we're-
are some other ones that I don't, you know, but I
course.
myself would feel comfortable if I knew what the new zoning regs were. You know, we still have time to be able to, you set your regulations, then we come back for a vote. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may just weigh in on some of the timing issues in response to, if I could just supplement some of Lori's responses. So Public Act 2129, an act concerning the Zoning Enabling Act, accessory apartments, training for certain land use officials, and it goes on, is a 28-page piece of legislation, Counselor. I attempted to summarize it in my memo of July 16, 2021. And I just want to correct the record with regard to this distinction between, do we have until January 1, 2023? What's the urgency if we have all that time? And it's not that simple.
Okay.
If you read the act, many of the provisions become effective October 1, 2021, which was Friday. And any existing zoning regulations that conflict with those new portions of the state law that took effect Friday will be deemed null and void. I believe effective January 1, 2022, and I'm referring to Section 6 of the Act, page 13 of 28 pages. And so I've seen, I mean, and listen, it's 28 pages of new law, and so lawyers can argue about it, but it was presented to me, and my interpretation of it is that municipalities have until January 1, 23 to opt out. But because many of the provisions took effect last Friday, you have a smaller window where you can be out of compliance. And if you're out of compliance, it's possible that of January 1, 2022, certain of our provisions might be null and void.
Yeah, I have it right in front of
Okay.
me. Thank you.
Counselor Sakala.
All right, so I'm going to be perfectly honest. I mean, I consider myself a pretty intelligent person. I mean, I can read the law. I'm having a really tough time with this because we're voting to opt out of something so something can happen. Like the double negatives, it kills me. But here's my specific question. If we don't opt out, can a person by right go and put another dwelling on their home if they have already reached the coverage percentage that is allowed by our regulations?
Absolutely not.
So they still have to abide by our zoning regs, even if we haven't opted out. So
Correct.
your
But they-
example of being worried that down in Thompsonville, people would be putting ADUs up all over the place,
Not going to
that's
happen.
not going to happen because if they've already reached that threshold, they can't put one up anyway. So only people
It's
who
true.
have the ability and the availability of whatever percentage can be covered on their lot, they have the option. So not everybody will.
Right. Right. It would be really difficult for us to ascertain exactly how many residential, single-family lots would be able to put this in. That would be a huge study.
Yeah. No, and I get that. I'm just trying to clarify
No.
a couple of the things that you said.
No, but that is correct, what you just
Okay,
repeated.
all right, thank you.
Councilor Ungar, then Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Hi, Lori.
Hi.
I'm
Hi,
trying
Lori.
to understand how the ADUs would benefit Enfield. I'm always looking to improve it, and I'm not convinced yet that this is something that's going to improve things. We're a residential area, we're a suburb, and this would turn our community into an urban
You know,
community. And there's only, to the best of my understanding, there's only 4 other states that have even passed this and approved it. So it's not like the whole country's doing it. To my knowledge, it's only California, Oregon, Vermont, and New York that have passed this. So it's not like, we're falling behind and we have 100,000 people that are trying to move in here and we need to do this. I don't see how it's going to improve us. It's just going to change our whole skyline. So
I
I'm not convinced
personally,
that it's the best thing.
I personally believe that in the right lot, in the right place, that this could be a great opportunity for a new dwelling unit. Something over a garage or something like that that's actually separate, that isn't for in-law apartments, or in-law relatives. However, if you do it without any guidance or rules, it could backfire. Will it? I don't know. Will everybody come in and ask for this? Maybe, maybe not. It's hard to tell. But it's just another way to diversify the housing stock.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Lori, would you say that this would have the most impact on our R44 and R88 districts, more so than our densely built districts? And also, these units can be as small as 400 square feet. So it could be that the R33s may be affected by that. But I really think that you need good local control in order to get a really good plan. Thanks, Lori.
Yeah, I think statistically, yeah, you're probably correct. Those are the larger lots, and they're going to be the ones that have the most or the least amount of existing coverage.
Any other questions? Lori, non-conforming use, so if the lot's non-conforming already, which a lot of our lots are, this doesn't have to conform, correct?
It would still comply. I mean, the ADU would still be able to be placed there, provided they haven't met their maximum coverage.
So,
Anywhere a single-family house is permitted.
right, so I don't think this necessarily affects Townsville, it's just all the other parts of town where if you have a big enough lot, you could subdivide now if you wanted to. So, I mean, yeah.
Not necessarily if you don't have frontage.
It's a better option than putting a dwelling in your backyard and you don't have a public hearing.
There you go.
And I think the attorney took care, I mean, right, the 1122, the reason why we have to move, because we don't have a lot of time, because that's what the state built into the regulations. And oh, by the way, you folks are working on the regulations, but unfortunately, it's not going to be ready till spring. So the urgency was built in by the memo that was sent in July of this year that we all got. And that's why the P&Z acted in August. And that's why we're trying to act now, because we don't have a whole lot of time. And it's not because we want to push this forward, but we have no choice. Question for you so currently, what if, so if someone was going to put one of these in when we do our regulations, would they have to go to wetlands?
If
Because
the
most of our
wetlands were
developments are on wetlands.
They would need to go to wetlands if it was impacted.
Okay, so they would. So whether but they have a public hearing or just go through, they wouldn't have to have a public hearing, correct?
No, not
What
typically.
about easements? What if we have an easement, which we do have on a lot of these properties where we have a pipe, and someone decides to want to put one of these in their backyard? So then, we've talked about the utilities, what about our sewage, connecting to our sewage pipes? Which we just been through 6 months of some of the worst rain we've ever had, and people have gotten water in their cellars. And I actually have seen personally, where I actually went to a neighborhood where a woman who actually had a lake in her backyard, because the neighbor who did a beautiful job in her backyard, but guess what? The water went somewheres. You put one of these in as a permanent structure, we have wetlands all over town. That's my concern, because we just went through it. And when people are getting water in their basement, when you put a dwelling of that structure, whether it's 400 square feet or 1,000, and oh, by the way, who regulates who you can rent it to? That would be outside of your regulations, correct?
No, the Public Act says it could be
Anyone, right?
occupied by anybody.
Correct. So there's no control there. And again, we talked about, we already meet the regulations. The other beautiful thing is, We also have the first-time homeowners program that is working. We're
Yes.
bringing people from outside of town, and they're buying properties anywhere in town. Anywhere. Keyword, anywhere. So we are committed to getting affordable housing to anyone who wants to purchase a home. We're already committed to it. We have the programs in place, and we're committed with the funding. Here, I think we have no choice but to opt out. We have to trust our local boards, whether to do the right thing. That's why we're paying you as our planner or development director, and you're working on the regulations. But the state put the legislation together where we don't have a whole lot of time to actually work through that. And again, you can already add an in-law apartment if you'd like to.
Yes,
So.
provided you get a public hearing.
Right, and exactly,
Special
and that's
permit.
what the special use permit works. And maybe you can add that in when you're to regulations, when you do an ADU, you have a special use permit, so at least someone gets to have a public hearing before you put a structure next to your property.
Yeah.
And again, I've seen some of the complaints with the shed, just a shed. I mean, I know you've heard them too, and when
yeah.
someone just put a shed in their backyard, never mind a dwelling. So, sorry, I know you, go right ahead, you.
No, just a couple of questions I had from the questions from the council. One, Lori, that you touched upon, especially in Thompsonville, especially in the winter with the storms and no parking. It's a real challenge now. I know you said that with these, the big difference is they don't have to actually be family, so they're not an in-law unit, and they don't have to be attached, and the sizes can be different. So if you get a couple or three people, however you're going to determine what the occupancy can be, especially in Thompsonville, did you say they are required to have up to one additional parking space, or there won't even be a minimum? My concern being, Lori, you go to one of these places, maybe the coverage on the lot is technically enough, but where are those people going to park? Because there's not parking now. Do they have to have parking, or they don't have to have any at all, and it's going to be a dog-eat-dog contest on the sidewalk like it is now?
So the act actually calls for a maximum of one parking space for this accessory dwelling unit.
So they don't have to have a minimum?
They don't have to have a minimum, but you can
So in
only-
these areas, you can put in one neighborhood ostensibly, 20 of these have 100 or 200 new people, and we have no accommodations for parking.
theoretically.
I mean, to me, that to me, and I've been following it, and back and forth, I think, obviously, with control and with measured response, we should allow more than what we have. I think there's not a great demand right now for the in-law because of that requirement, but as Bob said, there are others who might be benefiting from this, handicapped. Others don't have to necessarily be a blood relative now to be a family member. So I think that would be important. But my big concern, and also I will tell you down there, the pump station, under our ARA money, we're dedicating a lot of funds. We have to spend about 13 to 14 million. And I would be remiss, I'll just have Donald Nunes. One of the problem children of the pump stations is the one down in Thompsonville. We have a real serious situation about not only improving it, but maybe having to move it. I don't know what the effect of this increase would be on that pump station. I will ask him to look at that immediately. If I'd known it was an issue, I thought there were other controls, but I want to make sure that we're not, buying a very, very expensive problem here. But I really have to say to you, and I think to Councilor Mangini, her big concern is all of ours. If you opt out, there are no hearings. We no longer have an ability for neighbors or people affected. So I think just know that's the law of unintended consequences. We want to do a good deed, but as soon as these come in, you're going to be the recipient of the neighbors saying, oh my gosh, where are these people going to park? It's a nightmare right now, and all the other issues. So I wish I would really like to know from the town attorney a little more clearly if the drop dead date based on our situation is the first of this year or the first of next year. I think, if we don't do it and some things have been put in place, well, okay, it's already happened. We're already bound by them. But I think for your purpose, if you want more information, we really need to know the time frame, because I think it's not appropriate to ask these folks to vote if they have a year as compared to they have a month.
The answer is this, that a town may not opt out after January 1, 2023. Between October 1 of 2021 and January 1, 2023, any of our regulations that conflict with this, I think, are subject to being declared null and void. And it's a case-by-case basis. If on a particular lot, somebody came in and said, I want to do this, and their counselor, they could argue, based on the new law, I'm entitled as of right to do this because it conflicts with your reg.
Exactly.
That's the implication if you don't opt out.
It's exact.
But it's a
that's
case-by-case
exactly the
basis.
answer. It's exactly
you.
the answer. Sorry, I mean, and
Yeah.
again, like you said, we are providing affordable housing. We're committed to providing affordable housing all over town. And one more say, first-time homeowners program is working. The applications are coming from outside of Enfield, and they're buying properties all over town. That's being fair and equitable. Not allowing someone to put a dwelling in their backyard and it ruins your yard because, you know what, you can't go in a public hearing, which you can do now. You can show up and say, hey, I would really want to work with the neighbor, but, my beautiful backyard is going to be underwater every time which we've had tons of rain. And again, if you've been one of those folks, and I recommend you talking to one of those neighbors who've actually had a flood in their backyard over the last 6 months, it's not pretty. I'm just being honest. Yeah. Sorry. Any other questions for Lori? Charlotte? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the other question and concern that I had was, like for blight, it's gonna like change all of our blight rules too, because if they can only do blight with what you could see in the backyard, but now you have an accessory dwelling unit, does your backyard now become the front yard and open for, consideration into blight? Like, what if the person who is in the accessory dwelling unit, doesn't do their share of the yard or has, junk all over the place? I mean, those are other things I think that are worrisome about it. I'm not saying that I don't, agree that people should have, in-law apartments, because those, are very beneficial and stuff. But I mean, if planning and zoning already had a unanimous vote about it, I think we should trust, what they're going to do is going to be right for the town. I mean, we all appoint them. But the other blight was the other thing that I was concerned about.
Yeah, with
Right,
valid
so
concern.
basically, if you can't see in the backyard from the road, unless the neighbor that abuts in the back complains, unfortunately, you're stuck with whatever's in the backyard. And we can't do our zoning or our blight ordinances and our fines and things that we can control when you can see the front of the property, which has been very effective, especially on abandoned properties in town where we've been able to clean and lean, flip them and get them back onto the tax rolls. So again, your neighborhood values go up as opposed to a property that sits there for 20 years and collects fines. That's actually a great point.
Yeah, that's certainly a valid concern.
Sorry, Laura, in closing, anything? I know
I just wanted to give you kind of the facts. I'm not sure if there's anything in our zoning regulations that would become null and void, and by that, I wonder, by the fact that we don't have any accessory dwelling units permitted currently, would we have to take that into consideration and have to adopt these regulations? And I'm not sure if anybody's prepared to answer that question at this point, because we don't have anything that would be contrary to this, but that means we have nothing. So I don't know how that weighs.
which I don't know if is a good thing. Sorry,
So,
I hear you. I don't know if it's a good thing with the state with the law the way it's written, having nothing.
But I will say that, part of the act also requires that we do a 5-year housing plan and housing study, which will have to show affordable housing, promotion of affordable housing. So we're going to be doing that regardless.
Yep. Thank you. Any other questions for Lori? Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. All right, so Lori, sorry for being late, but we are unfortunately late. So we're moving into what was supposed to be the 6:45 public hearing on the conveyance of 110 High Street. Today is October 4th, 2021. Public hearing ground rules. Roll call, please, Sheila.
Councilor Bosco.
Here.
Councilor Sakala.
Here.
Councilor Crisati.
Here.
Councilor Hemler.
Here.
Mayor Ludwig.
Here.
Councilor Mangini.
Here.
Councilor Muller.
Here.
Councilor Riley. Here. Councilor Sefraza.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Here.
Councilor Ungary.
Here.
11 members present, none absent.
Thank you, Sheila. The following notice of public hearing was published in the Journal Enquirer on Thursday, September 23rd, 2021. The Town of Enfield legal notice. The Enfield Town Council will hear a public hearing regarding a conveyance of 110 High Street to be held on October 4th, 2021, beginning at 7:05 PM in the Town Council chambers of the Enfield Town Hall, located 820 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut. In order to hear public comments, information regarding the proposed conveyance will be viewed at www.enfield-ct.gov. Any questions directed to Nelson Teresa, our Deputy Director of Economic Community Development, at 860-253-6391, dated at Enfield, Connecticut, as the 22nd day of September 2021, by Sheila M. Bailey, our Town Clerk. Ground rules for the public hearing: there is no time limit, but we ask that each person not take up too much time so that everyone has the opportunity to speak. After each person who desires has one chance to speak, we shall permit individuals a second chance. After those individuals who desire a second time, we shall permit those individuals a third, fourth, etc. Please refrain from personalities. Again, this public hearing is specifically to the 110 High Street. Anyone would like to speak on this particular building? I don't know, Chris, maybe just quick what the conveyance is, real quick. So I mean, maybe just, yeah.
Nelson's on if he just wants to give the
Nelson, like quick
Essentials.
5-minute, 2-minute dissertation.
30-second.
You're on mute, Nelson?
Oh, he must have popped off.
Yeah, I don't see Nelson listed on here.
Well, this is the referral. We've had the properties
Yeah.
listed and promoted, and this is part of the process to allow for sale of, an offer that's been made on the property.
Got it. Anyone like to speak specifically in his building? Anyone like to speak specifically in his public hearing? Going once? Going twice? I declare the public hearing closed. We move on to the next public hearing. Again, this is October 4th, 2021. It is 7:03. Roll call, please, Sheila.
Councilor Bosco. Councilor Sakala.
Here.
Councilor Crisati.
Here.
Councilor Hemler.
Here.
Mayor Ludwig.
Here.
Councilor Mangini.
Here.
Councilor Muller.
Here.
Councilor Riley. Here. Councilor Safraza.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Here.
Councilor Ungary.
Here.
11 members present, none absent.
Thank you, Sheila. Following notice of public hearing was published in the Journal Enquirer on Thursday, September 23rd, 2021. The Town of Enfield legal notice. The Enfield Town Council will hold a public hearing regarding the conveyance of 52 Prospect Street to be held on October 4th, 2021, beginning at 7:03 PM in the council chambers at the Enfield Town Hall, located at 820 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut. In order to hear public comment, information regarding the proposed conveyance can be viewed at www.enfield-connecticut.gov. Please direct any questions to Nelson Teresa, our Deputy Director of Economic Community Development, 860-253-6391. Dated at Enfield, Connecticut, the 22nd day of September, 2021. Sheila M. Bailey, our Town Clerk. Ground rules for the public hearing: there is no time limit, but that way we ask that each person not take up too much time so everyone has the opportunity to speak. We ask each person who desires has one chance, that we shall permit those individuals a second chance. After those individuals who speak a second time, we shall permit those individuals a third, fourth, etc. Please refrain from personalities. Again, same conveyance that we just had on 110. This is 52 Prospect Street. Anyone like specifically to talk on this piece of property for this public hearing? Anyone like to speak specifically in this property? Going once? Going twice? I declare the public hearing closed. We move right into the general meeting. Again, tonight is Monday, October 4th, 2021. It is 7:05, and prayer, Councilor Muller.
Dear Lord, tonight, as we meet to make decisions on behalf of the citizens of Enfield, we ask for your guidance and wisdom. We understand that the choices we make affect the lives of all who call Enfield their home. May our minds be clear, our hearts prepared, and our speech filled with compassion and kindness. We also pray for our fellow councilor, Joe Bosco, as he recuperates from illness. Restore his strength and bring him to full recovery so he can once again join us on the dais. We ask this in the Lord's name, amen.
Amen.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Sheila.
Counselor Muller.
Here.
Counselor Riley. Here. Counselor Stefranza.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Souza. Here. Counselor Ungary.
Here.
Counselor Bosco.
Here.
Counselor Sakala.
Here.
Counselor Crisati.
Here.
Counselor Hemler.
Here.
Mayor Ludwig.
Here.
Counselor Mangini.
Here.
That's 11 present, none absent.
Thank you, Sheila. Item 4, fire evacuation announcement. In case of fire, we have the exits in the back of the building. Either go left or right in an orderly fashion out the doors to the parking lot. We also have doors to our left to the audience right. As you go through those doors, there's doors immediately to your left. Please go down out the door, down the stairs and out into the parking lot in case of a fire. Item 5, minutes of preceding meeting, special meeting September 20th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve? By Councilor Mangini, second by Councilor Muller. Do I have any deletions, edits, edits, or corrections? Sorry about that. Hearing none, by show of hands, all those in favor? Opposed?
One abstention.
Abstention. We have 9 in favor and 2 abstentions. Sheila?
Correct.
Regular meeting, do I have a motion to approve September 20th, 2021 by Councilor Muller, seconded by Councilor Ungary? Do I have any corrections, deletions, or edits? Hearing none, by show of hands, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? 9 in favor and 2 abstentions, Sheila? Item 6, special guest, we have none. We have none. Item 7, public communication petitions. No, it's, oh, no, I'm sorry. Never mind. Public communications petitions. Would anyone like to speak before the council at this time? Welcome.
Amanda Marquez, 8 Hoover Lane. We are being led to believe that if we control human beings, we can control a virus. If we wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, and social distance, we can keep COVID from spreading. That isn't how a virus functions. All of these measures are psychological crutches to make society feel good. Well, perception is not reality. None of the measures in place actually prevent or stop the spread. COVID-19 is mainly spread by microscopic aerosols generated by breathing, talking, sneezing, and coughing, exactly the same way other viruses are spread. The vast majority of these infectious aerosols easily penetrate common masks. 90% of the aerosols are 1/17 the size of the pores in surgical masks and 1/80th the size of the pores in the cloth masks, and light enough to stay airborne for hours, which allows them to freely travel through the gaps around the edges of these masks. The idea of masking did not suddenly appear in March of 2020. The usage of face masks at preventing infectious disease has been well studied, and the conclusion is they are ineffective. If they were effective, we would have been wearing them long before COVID emerged. The studies have failed to produce results that support any benefit of masking healthy human beings, let alone young children with developing brains. N95 masks must meet strict filtration standards and be professionally fitted to each user's face to form a tight seal. In addition, OSHA requires employers to conduct a medical evaluation of each employee required to wear an N95 due to how heavily they restrict breathing and the burden they can place on the wearer's overall health. N95 masks purchased and worn by the general public are not fit checked and therefore cannot be expected to filter effectively. Surgical and medical masks are primarily worn to limit large droplet transmission. The FDA's COVID-19 guidance for these masks states that they cannot be labeled for antimicrobial or antiviral protection and cannot make filtration claims for particles of any size. These masks have a poor fit and filtration and cannot be expected to significantly reduce the inhalation of infectious aerosols. Cloth masks are made of common fabric and are highly permeable, and they become even more permeable with every wash cycle. A 2015 study of cloth masks concluded that particle filtration was extremely poor, at almost 0%. They were found to cause significant disease transmission and were highly discouraged in the use of infection prevention. The FDA explicitly states that under emergency use authorization, surgical or cloth masks cannot state or imply that they are intended for use as infection prevention or reduction. They must state that not because misuse may result in a lawsuit, but because these masks simply do not present the capabilities to prevent the spread of a virus, and to label them as such is false advertising. In 2019, the WHO conducted an analysis of numerous randomized control trials related to masking and found that there was no evidence that masks reduce the spread of viruses in community settings. In 2011, the Journal of Influenza and Other Respiratory Viruses published just a review of scientific evidence on the use of masks to prevent the transmission of influenza. It concluded that none of the studies they reviewed established a conclusive relationship between mask use and protection against infection. The masks sold in stores for the general public to wear are nothing more than a feel-good measure. Not designed or intended to prevent, mitigate, treat, diagnose, or cure any disease or health condition, including COVID-19 or coronavirus. Not intended for a medical purpose. Not a replacement for medical-grade personal protective equipment. This general mask cannot eliminate the risk of contracting infectious disease. These are all labels on the packaging of the very masks we are being mandated to wear. Why are people so willing to ignore the conclusive data stating the ineffectiveness of masks and somehow demand others wear them, knowing that they have little to no infection prevention? Misleading the public into thinking these very masks are reliable protection in the spread of coronavirus is a failure of leadership. A leader should use both common sense and expert opinion to make these decisions, and somehow our elected government officials are doing neither. Mandating a person continue to use a medical intervention proven ineffective is nothing more than making them play pretend. Even if these masks were effective in prevention and the spread of COVID, the general public isn't even wearing them correctly. The very people sitting in this seat demanding we force our children and others to wear masks are continually touching and adjusting them, while others wear them completely under their nose. They also remove the mask entirely to talk into the microphone with no regard to proper donning and doffing procedures required for mask wearing. A quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. says, "One has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. Just because a mandate is passed down from a totalitarian leader does not mean it is always in the best interest of the people. We have a moral responsibility to question those governing us. We must stand up and speak out against injustices, especially when it comes to our children. For masks, there's a simple solution, and one that doesn't mean tossing out our individual civil liberties, and it goes like this. Those who choose to wear a mask can do so, and those who don't are not mandated against their free will."
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak for the council? Anyone else like to speak for the council? So he had his hand up first. Yeah, go ahead, sir. Then Bob. Welcome.
Matthew Schmidt, 55 North Main. Good evening, Town Council members. I'm here once again speaking out against the school mask mandate. Recently, I was approached by a parent who also opposes the mandate. They asked me how old my kid was. When I told them that I don't have any kids, they seemed surprised. They asked my reasoning for opposing the school mask mandates. So I told them because the forced masking of children is wrong. That ultimately is what it comes down to. So this is not a question of revenue for the town or whether or not a road diet on Route 5 is appropriate. This is about harming children. It is wrong. And you don't have to be a parent to find it disgraceful that town and school leaders sit idly by and let it happen. It also doesn't matter if I'm the only one speaking out against it or if there are thousands along with me. Polling numbers don't make the school mask mandate any less wrong. So waiting for a certain level of outrage to give political cover before you act is shameful, in my opinion. And please don't tell me there is nothing you can do. History is filled with anonymous do-nothings who allowed one atrocity after another. We don't need any more do-nothings. And yes, this is an atrocity. You are complicit in forcing children to wear a medical device that is known to cause harm, a medical device that I would bet most adults wouldn't wear for the extended period of time you expect these children to. What I find so outstandingly ironic is that the majority of this council refuses to wear this same medical device. So either it is a case of rules for thee but not for me, or this council lacks the courage to do what is necessary to redress the harm of forced masking Enfield school children. I will end here by restating something I first said to this council back in August. We have seen state and federal agencies in the name of public health use their power to usurp local governmental bodies, essentially punching down, to impose their will on the populace. It is time for a local governmental body, in the name of public health, to use its power to defend its most vulnerable populace. It's time for this council to punch up. To sit and wait for the next decree from the state is not an option. It is time to act. Let the world know that you won't sit by and watch Enfield's children be harmed unnecessarily. It is time to unmask the children. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Can you hear me? Welcome. I don't know, Bob, is it on? I can't hear you.
Okay.
There you go. Welcome.
Well, Mike, some of the meetings I can't hear you, or hear planning and zoning, the chairman doesn't have his microphone on, so there should be a little policing of that. You know, we police everything else. We police people in the neighborhood, but we don't police the elected officials. I agree with the past two speakers. They know their stuff. Masks are theater. Shields are theater. It's all this big scam. I'll give you CDC numbers. CDC calculates the mortality of deaths. Heart disease is number one, about 600,000, 300,000 for cancer. Traffic accidents in 2019 were number 3. Flu was about number 7. Well, in 2019, number 3 was COVID-19. In 2020, up to August, it's down to 7th where flu, the same flu level. But heart disease and cancer are still number 1 and 2. They kill over 1 million people. But yet we're talking about petty stuff here. What we have to fear is fear itself. People wearing masks have fear that they're going to get the disease. You're going to get the disease anyways. You handle money, you're going to get the disease. If your immune system is weak, you want to improve it, you're going to get the disease. Chris, I gave you a document. You can see who's backing marijuana. It's some of the richest people in the United States and the world. And for us to opt out is the wrong thing. A recent survey of Massachusetts police chiefs, they were apprehensive 4 years ago. But now 90% are with the marijuana sales. And they're not having any problems that was predicted. Everybody fears something new, that there's going to be chaos when you do something. And I'm really surprised at the 6 of you that voted to opt out, because technically, you don't really know what you're talking about. The real problem is we want to put locks on guns, but we don't require locks on the medicine cabinet where the children can go in and get the opiates from the parents. Back in Prohibition, the kids would steal their father's flask for alcohol. So I'm really, really amazed that you people don't want to step forward and put regulations in. You have a package store right next to the school. Where's the regulations on distances from the school? And I see in some of these stores, they don't check IDs on over 21 for cigarettes. The vaping shops, it's chaos out there. But yet you want to try to control the people on what they can buy and what they can do. You got to stop the control, because what's going to happen? At election time, they're going to control the 6 of you. And the school board is unbelievable. They instead of talking about education, our math scores are horrifically bad. But they want to talk about events, this event, that event. They don't want to talk about education, and it's unbelievable. You got a job to do, you do it. You don't get extraneous things, and you got to mind your own business about the people's rights and needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak for the council?
Hey, everybody. Nick Hopkins, 2 Varner Lane.
Welcome.
Thank you. So just to start off, I think that homeowners should be able to build an accessory apartment on their property with some reasonable restrictions. I think that you should absolutely be able to build a small structure to house your elderly parent, or if you have an adult child with disabilities. I think that really is inherent in owning property, again, with some reasonable restrictions. At the last town council meeting, it was stated that any existing zoning regulations that don't comply with the new law will be voided on January 1st, 2022 if we don't opt out. That was misstated. Section 6E of the new law states that existing regulations that don't comply with the guidelines of the new law are voided by January 1st, 2023 if the town doesn't opt out. And I can just simply read you the law here just to make sure there's no confusion. If a municipality fails to adopt new regulations or amend existing regulations by January 1st, 2023 for the purpose of complying with the provisions of subsections A to D, inclusive of this section, and unless such municipality opts out of the provisions of set subsections in accordance with the provisions of subsection F of this section, any non-compliant existing regulation shall become null and void, and such municipality shall approve or deny applications for accessory apartments in accordance with the requirements for regulations set forth in the provisions of subsections A to D, inclusive of this section, until such municipality adopts or amends a regulation in compliance with said subsections. A municipality may not use or impose additional standards beyond those set forth in subsections A to D, inclusive of that section. So in plain English, we have until January 1st, 2022, to pass new zoning regulations that go further than the guidelines in the new state law, if we want to. Any regulations that we pass after January 1st, 2022 will be required to comply with the state rules, but our existing ones would not be voided. We have then until January 1st, 2023 to opt out of the state guidelines, from what I just read here. If we do not opt out, any of our existing regulations that go further than the new law become void. If we opt out of the accessory apartment guidelines but don't pass our own by January 1st, 2023, we are automatically opted into the state's new guidelines, as I just read that here. So you either have to adopt new regulations or amend existing regulations. You have to adopt new regulations or amend existing regulations, and you have to opt out of the provision. So if we simply opt out but don't actually pass new regulations that comply with A to D, we've automatically opted in. So just to make sure that's clear. I think if we want more local control, we need to have our own regulations in place before 2022 rolls around. And really, I think it just makes the most sense to not opt out before you have the regulations drawn up. You're putting the cart before the horse. So my thoughts on this law, this new law sets some standards for accessory apartments that make sense and are predictable and understandable for homeowners. Our current zoning rules for accessory apartments only state that, and I quote, an accessory apartment is a second dwelling unit located within a detached single-family dwelling situated on an individual lot. Such dwelling unit shall be subordinate to the principal dwelling in terms of size, location, and appearance. That's it. So that's also incredibly vague. I can't imagine that this is helpful for the zoning and planning board or homeowners considering whether they would like to build an accessory apartment for their loved one. I'm really not surprised that no one has done that yet in town. It's quite vague. So if we're concerned about people using ADUs as short-term rentals, we can restrict that. Other towns have done that in Connecticut, but that's completely separate from this law. Completely separate. Also, I don't think we should opt out of this law just based on the misconception that we can opt out of the new zoning regulation officer and certification requirements. I don't think this law allows us to opt out of that. That's something the states just impose, for good or for ill. So in summary, we aren't able to opt out of this law entirely. I think the town should reasonably balance letting people use their property how they want along the side of the rights of their neighbors to enjoy their own property. The smartest thing to do here is for the council to evaluate whether Enfield needs accessory apartment rules that go beyond the new law, and two, consider whether those rules are part of a section that we actually can opt out of. I don't think that we're ready to do that here, especially if we don't even understand what the deadlines are. Accordingly, I think we should postpone opting out until we have decided that we need stricter regulations and that we've actually drafted them. There is a window here between now and January 1st, 2022 to do that if we think that we need stricter ADU requirements.
Yep.
So okay, thank you.
Anyone else like to speak for the council?
Walter Cruzel, 21 Charlie Road. I wasn't going to speak, but after that gentleman, I'm shaking my head going back there, going, this is what we pay our legislatures to come up with 28 pages that you have to literally be a rocket scientist to understand what it means? But yet 2 weeks ago, we proclaimed Constitution Week here in Enfield. But yet last week, the same legislature that voted that misunderstanding bill to take powers away from our local planning and zoning, which they also gave their right to the governor by extending his executive powers till February for the sixth time on this so-called emergency. So, we pay them to come up with this stuff that you have to have a lawyer to read it and understand it. And like I said, it's probably a rocket scientist to figure out what it means. But then they wash their hands of any power and give their power to the governor for another 3-4 months. And on top of it, they still get paid, which you guys are not. So, and you guys are here working. So I just shake my head. Doesn't make any sense.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak for the council? Anyone else like to speak for the second time? Oh. Welcome.
Thank you. Money cheaters. Sheila Monroe, 3 Stacy Lane. On July 23, 2021, the Department of Education released a resource to help schools, colleges, and universities improve their ventilation systems to prevent the spread of COVID-19 and to provide healthy learning environments. The resource outlines how American Rescue Plan, ARP, funds can be used to improve air quality and is a part of the department's broader efforts to support schools as they prepare to welcome students back in for in-person learning for the fall. Is the COVID money of the $11 million we received part of that plan? If so, name the upgrades that have been made to our schools. If the air is being cleaned properly to fulfill the APR expectations, wouldn't this be a part of the solution? Which we could unmask our children so that they could breathe. Now is the time to install air purification systems as well as central air conditioning in every school. I'm sure you all can agree, that our children deserve nothing less. The funds available must be used on our children for their continued health and safety. If they are demanded to wear masks 10 hours a day, then I demand we use any and all measures to ensure a healthy resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak for the council?
Matt Despard, 3 Gordon Lane. Good evening, everybody. So I just want to say my opinion is that we should, or you guys should not opt out of this ADU legislation tonight. Like Nick brings up a really good point, that it sounds like the plan right now is to opt out and then come up with our own regulations in the spring. I think we really need to look at that law again, because as like what Nick is pointing out, is we need to come up with our own by January of this year, or else we're going to automatically be in. And I don't know, like, there seems to be like there's good things and maybe not such good things, but I think it's something that we need to take our time with, because, at the core here, we're talking about, property rights, owner rights, things that are going to affect our seniors and our families' property values. It's not something we should rush. And I really appreciate that that you guys tabled this from last time, and you, are taking time with it. And, not to bring up, there's just been some recent things that I think we should have taken more time with, and we didn't. And so I think it's great that that you guys are doing that here. And I don't think you should opt out now. I think this needs more consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak for the council? Welcome.
Hi there, Chris D'Antonio, 18 Montana Road. I'd just like to speak out again in favor of accessory apartment and allowing them as of right in Enfield. I do think that's reasonable. I think that zoning can be used as a force for good. It can also be used as a force for bad. It's shown that historically across all of Connecticut, across the country. A lot of the origins of zoning, especially exclusionary single-family zoning is not very pretty. It's created a lot of segregation across the country. I don't think Enfield is that special in that case. I'm glad we're doing well with housing affordability. I think affordability plays a small part in accessory apartments. I don't think it's exclusive though. I know it seems a little heavy-handed for the state to come down like this and with these requirements. It does not remove local control. We still have the ability to create good, sound zoning laws to create well-designed accessory apartments. Right, accessory apartments aren't just. I think there's been a lot of exaggeration, and everybody kind of instantly puts their mind to these 1,000 square foot, which definitely decent sized homes. Just added to the property, and we all know that's not what it's about, right? So for my house, 1,400 square foot. Under this new law, if we set the maximum to be 30%, right? So that's 400 square foot. Even within the confines of the current stature. But yeah, these accessory apartments, they could be above a garage, they could be a basement, they can be a standalone structure. These standalone structures, they're not going to be a dime a dozen. We look at anywhere. When, as of right, ADUs have been legalized, they have increased, but we're not talking everybody building one. Obviously, you need the space to do so. You also need the money to do so. It's not cheap to build a brand new, apartment building. The most reasonable use of them would be, cost effective and all, would be using your existing space. Your garage, your basement, maybe an additional wing. So ultimately, I think it's preemptive to opt out when we don't have a good alternative. Right now, looking at our zoning regulations for accessory apartments is intolerable. It's not surprising that nobody applies for them. Because who wants to come up to the zoning committee and have to plead their case so that their elderly parent or grandparent can live with them, and then they have to come back every 2 years just to prove that their elderly parent is still alive? That's kind of what the regulation seems to imply today. So I think that, in-law apartments, very narrow-minded. These are accessory apartments. Whether you want to live with a friend, maybe you rent it out to make a little money. I think there's a clear bias in this town against renters. I'm sure a lot of us have all started as renters one day. A lot of homeowners. You got to start somewhere, especially nowadays with the cost of housing. So I just want everybody to be aware of this. I'm bringing up this bias because I see it. We've all been there. But we're all in different walks of life, different perspectives we have. A single-family home may work great for you or me. Doesn't necessarily work for everybody, and I think we have to keep that in mind. So whatever plans we come up with for accessory apartments, we can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. We got to, be reasonable and be accommodating. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak for the council? Anyone else like to speak for the council for the second time?
Welcome. Bob T. Katz, Woodgate Circle. On about 4 o'clock this afternoon, I talked with Joe Bosco. He was on his way home. He's over the COVID-19. He sounds like Joe Bosco, and he says his affliction is probably one of the better for cure. I don't know the terminology, but he's very positive that he's going to be all right, and I'm sure he's going to be all right. Joe's a great guy, and he's done a lot of good on the town council, even though him and I don't agree on some issues. That was my daughter. I was supposed to meet her at the Hartford PD at 11 o'clock. She was going to get out of work, but she's got to work late. But it was really interesting. One Saturday night at 2 in the morning, I went down to Hartford on New Britain Avenue and see all the activity. There's more people at 2 o'clock in the morning in Hartford on the street. She showed me there was like 15 shot spotters went off. They had New Britain Avenue cordoned off because somebody was dead in the street. But the bars closed and everybody was out and the music was playing and everything else. It's a whole different world. So if you were down in that world, you would think a lot different about Enfield because that's more the real world in all the cities. I asked Chris Bromson about the walking police down in Thompsonville. I said, you should only allow black and brown police down in Thompsonville, no white police officers. You know what he told me? He says, we try to hire them, they can't come. Well, as far as I'm concerned, you need a whole new HR department because they're coming in other towns, they're easy to hire, they're looking for jobs. There's a lot of Hispanic people out there that could qualify, and I think that's where we should move. Hire no more white police officers, the black and brown police. But your vote to me told me that you don't trust the Enfield Police Department because you want to control them. I think you should let the police chief do his job, allow the marijuana. Here's an article in the Hartford Courant today. Conviction analysis finds disparity in the courts. So it starts in the street, you arrest black and brown people, and then when they get to the court, there's a higher conviction rate. This is wrong. And you guys have the power to change it, and you're not doing it. You want to keep it going the same it is. So you got to change your attitude about what's going on in the town, and especially down in Thompsonville, because you're never going to revitalize Thompsonville with this attitude.
Thank you. No one else like to speak for the council? No one else like to speak? Hearing none, I declare public communications closed. Move it over to the councilor communications. Councilor Mancini.
Sorry, thank you. Shout out to ERFC, wonderful fundraiser Saturday evening that many of us attended. It's a great program. It serves the community. I'm very happy to have seen the number of people that came out and supported it. Also, I want to mention, excuse me, that October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So if you can, please contribute to breast cancer funds, and or at least keep them in your hearts and prayers. It's a very important issue. Thank you.
Councilor Crissati.
Yes, good evening. Thank you to everybody that spoke tonight. Really listened to, everybody from the mask issue to the ADUs. And so I thank you for coming up and sharing. This past weekend, I did have the pleasure to attend the Enfield Fencing Club opening. It was really exciting to see the sport come to Enfield, and the experienced instructors that opened up this facility. I know some of us were there, and it was quite interesting. I can't wait to get an actual full workout down there. You'll sweat a few pounds off, let me tell you. But it was very interesting. The other thing that I want to mention was a Family Day on the Green, hosted by ERFC. I want to give a special shout out to Connie Provencher for her time and effort that she put behind organizing this event, and all her co-workers who put on Family Day, and then also the farm to table dinner that was a lot of people. There must have been maybe over 200 people in attendance. The food was great. The company was excellent. And all the sponsors, that came out and, that help ERFC be the organization that they are. Also, they corralled me to go into the dunk tank. And, I think I got dunked about 25 times. And it was well worth it because they earned a lot of money. So I was happy to do that. Connie Preventure could not be here tonight. She was recuperating. I believe she's home now. And she just wants to say thank you to everybody that came out and supported the event. And I told her that I would make an announcement in front of everybody tonight. But so, she's expressing her thankfulness to all the sponsors, everybody that came out for this event. And, once again, Connie, we wish you a speedy recovery. So thank you for that. There's just one other thing that I want to mention. This will be through the mayor to the town manager. I had somebody contact me on Oakwood Street, 36 Oakwood Street, and they're concerned about the traffic and the high rate of speed that motorists are doing through their neighborhood. And I said that I would bring it to their attention. So I asked him, I said, well, what are you kind of experiencing? He says, well, the way that the road is being used as a cut through, down for like on off of George Washington and North Maple Street. They're using that as a go-through street. And he's just wondering if there could be possibly a study for maybe a possible stop sign or speed bumps in the road or whatever, just something to look at. And I said that I would mention it, and that's all I have to say. Okay?
I'd like to thank everyone for coming out and speaking. It's only October 4th, and to me, it's been a busy month already. I went to Enfield High School. They had an open house. The place was full of teachers, students, parents. The parents were learning all about their kids' schedules, and it was just pretty exciting to be there. I spent some time in the School Career Center, speaking with Colleen Siniglio and Jamie Badaran. They are just great in that department. They have a heart for the kids, and they're trying to steer them in the right direction of their interests and find a career for themselves. They're just awesome. Also attended the ribbon cutting of the new Enfield Fencing Club, as Bob had mentioned. That was pretty exciting to see them actually do a demonstration, and I had only seen it on television through the Olympics, so it was really kind of fun to see them in person doing that type of sport. So it's there, and it's over in Stop and Shop Plaza if people are interested in checking them out. It looks like a really fun hobby. I attended the Enfield Together Coalition meeting. They're having a drug take-back day on October 23rd. So if anybody has any unused prescriptions and you want to dispose of them safely and you're not sure what to do with them, you don't know if you want to flush them or throw them out and they get in the water, we have different drop boxes that you can bring them to. And then they'll be incinerated by the police department. The two places that you can bring them is at the Enfield Police Department. And they're at 293 Elm Street, and that's open 24 hours a day. You can just go in there, just drop them off. The other place is at the Town Hall, and that will be from 10 in the morning till 2 p.m., and that's on October 23rd. So we want to keep people safe and dispose of them properly. Thank you.
I make a motion to suspend the rules and move items A1 through A3, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, and L to miscellaneous and proceed to vote.
Motion made.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Mangini to suspend rules and move the items to miscellaneous. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none by show of hands, all those in favor? Opposed, abstentions? Sheila, 10 in favor, 0 against? Anyone else? Anyone else?
In favor, 11.
Anyone virtual? I'm sorry, anyone?
Mike,
Sheila.
I'm in favor.
Sorry, Sheila, 10-0.
Favor. It's 11-0, Mike.
Someone was out, someone was not you guys, it was someone from the council. I mean, here, it was 10-0. Anyone else, sorry, from virtual land, anything?
Yep, can you hear me, Mike?
Yep.
I was fair.
Okay, no problem. So, I'll have a question for you, actually, when we, just real quick, again, I think the town, folks doing a great job decorating the town again. It's fantastic, all the dragons that are up, and again, it's Halloween, it's great to see. I mean, you just drive around town, get a coffee, and have a great time. And I just want to caution, I mean, I've heard there's some been discussions, just again, caution, read your history about using the military on the street. I don't care what the purpose of the using the military is. It is dangerous to put the military on our streets. I don't care what the purpose is. Read your history and find out what happens in any country that allows that to happen. I understand what we're hearing in Massachusetts, what they're doing. I hear some rumblings what's going on in Connecticut. That's another thing to be concerned about, other than a lot of the other things that folks have talked about. You know, again, I understand it's a feel-good thing. Let people do their jobs, and we don't need the military on the street. We need to caution that. I'll have a question on the mask that I have for the attorney. Moving over to town manager report, item 9.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and guests. A couple of things, what we covered, and I think that there were a couple of questions I'll pass on in regard to traffic. Those are perennial. Mr. Casati, as you know, it's like pop a mole. You put up speed enforcement in one area and it happens in another, but it's just something we have to constantly be vigilant about. And also, traffic calming is on for the Public Safety Subcommittee tomorrow morning for discussion. It's been looked at in the past, and so we can look at it again. As I said, area towns around us have been incorporating it, so perhaps it's an idea whose time has come. In regard to other, I would just say, I think because it's so important, I like to talk to Bob. He stops by, he'll visit, he'll give me periodicals and information, cutting edge. He's a good researcher. But I think I misunderstood what he said a little earlier, because I'd have to take issue with the fact, perhaps the way it was delivered in regard to minority officers in the Enfield Police Department. It's been a priority to recruit and keep minority officers in the town. It's just a fact of life. Chief Fox currently and Chief Ferraza in the past will attest to it. And I think it's what Bob touched upon. A lot of younger officers want the shake and move of a city, of an urban setting for police work. They're young. They're not as interested in being out in the cowlands of Suffield or Ellington, and sometimes Enfield. We're lucky we're a little bigger. We offer some other areas that they can advance, such in K-9 or in CREST units and drug units and things. So we offer a little more. But young guys, especially a lot of the young men and women who are coming out of the military, want a little more action. We've tried. We've worked with the NAACP to actually advertise in their magazines to try to recruit minorities. I will just tell you, Bob had come in, but since we last spoke, we've hired 2 minority officers in the span of about a month. The chief, since he's been there, we've gone from 1 African-American to 3 African-American officers. We've gone from 2 Hispanics to 4, and we're hiring another one, and that does not include all of the lady officers that we've augmented our forces with. We believe in getting the best and the brightest, those professionals who will come to the town and do the best to keep our citizens safe. And I don't think anyone should ignore the commitment. This council, after the budget, invested $400,000 in manpower in addition to the upgrades to put a substation in Thompsonville. What kind of commitment does that talk about? The chief previously, Sferraza, said he'd asked for dozens of years to commit resources to Thompsonville. We did it. It's sort of like the resident state police patrol. These 4 officers are committed to Thompsonville. They will not be in other areas. They won't be in K-9. They won't be leaving the town. They're going to learn and meet the citizens. It's been tremendously successful. If you want to come to Thompsonville during the day, talk to the shop owners, talk to the moms and dads who are in back here all hours of the day and night at our 2-play station. And wait till you see when we add the walking paths and the basketball court. We're investing. And I would be loath and I would cringe to think that Bob really meant that we're going to be separate but equal. That we're only going to say that in certain areas, black and Hispanic officers are the only ones that can patrol? Are we only going to allow black and Hispanic people to buy there? I don't think that's what he meant. That's not something that we would entertain to do. We're going to hire the best people. They're going to work throughout the town, just like we do with Public Works, Library, Social Services, Senior Center, the best people for the job. We're trying our hardest, and no one's done more than this council put their money where their mouth is. You show me another community that did a substation in an area such as we did with a park like we're building anywhere else in Northern Connecticut or the state for that matter. You're putting resources into the quality of life for all of our residents so they do better and our town does better, and it's showing. And we'll be talking about a couple other very exciting projects that will reflect that in the agenda as we proceed. Thank you.
Are we doing rails or trails now? Lori? Yep.
I knew I had something else before Bob distracted me. Thank you, Bob. Lori Whitten, we like to follow up on things. Some people say to me, well, this council's got a lot done. It's because we follow up. We have a lot of meetings internally in between these meetings. And again, I want to say for the public, and I want to talk about for a moment Opera House Players, there's misunderstandings sometimes about how the government functions. And people sometimes like to say, well, these things are done in the back room and they're deals and on phones. We don't do that. They've got to come here as a council together to discuss either an executive session, real estate negotiations, pending litigations, which the law allows to be private, and we do that. And then we have other matters that are put on the agenda by agreement of the leadership, and we discuss them, come to conclusion. I can't put those on in between. So, for instance, tonight we did have a very good discussion with Opera House Players. It's confidential, but we'll come back in a couple weeks after council and their caucuses have had a chance to digest the suggestions, and we'll do it according to the process. We could do things more quickly, but you make mistakes, and we want to follow the FOI laws. We take them very seriously. So we believe in the bright sunshine of the day to make these important decisions. And with that, Lori Whitten, there's a couple of things the council has been very interested in, and our public. They both also affect quality of life, in addition to the bike paths and other things that we're putting in, and basketball courts she's also working on, and the council's asked her to keep an eye on the rails to trails in another part of town. She's going to give an update on that, and also there's a piece of property on the Connecticut River that Eversource has that also might be usable for us for passive recreation if we could only get to the darn thing, short of parachuting in. So she's following those, and she's going to give an update. Again, we don't stop. We run these things to ground, and we try to make these things happen for the council and for the residents of Enfield. Lori?
Welcome, Lori. Just name and title, sorry. I know you're already here. But.
Thank you again. Lori Whitten, Director of Development Services. So I'm going to start with the rails to trails because it's probably got the more information in it. A while back, the DOT gave a presentation to the town council on the actual freight line, which is on the eastern part of town, and it might become active, and it will become active is really the key. A lot of people kind of thought it was defunct and would really like to see it turned into rails to trails. So that really is not going to happen. However, there is a possibility, I don't know how likely it is, that we could have a shared right-of-way with the trail and the railroad itself. So I'm just going to go through quickly based on what the DOT presentation outlined and my conversations with Commissioner Eucalito and his representatives from the DOT. So first of all, it's been a lot of back and forth of, okay, I've sent you an email, and then it's a wait, and then they send me an email, and I respond, and it's been a lot of back and forth, but not very quick all the time, unfortunately. So that just shows that they're very busy, I'm sure. So basically, step one would be the town submittal to the DOT, which is basically just talking about a conceptual trail design. We'd have to show that we could actually fit a 4 or 10-foot trail within the right-of-way, that it has to be at least 25 feet from the edge of the railroad tie. And I did a quick GIS survey, and it looked like the majority of the trail, which is about 6 miles long, could support that, but then there are areas of woods and wetlands and bridges and things that are actually an impediment to doing that. The big thing is that if we were going to move forward, we would have to conduct a title search for the entire 6 miles of the railroad to ascertain what easements have already been granted there, because I don't know whether they don't have a list of them, but they just basically said they're historic. Some of them are from farms, some of them are private crossings, other easements. They just approved a solar power easement over part of it. So we would have to literally do a title search for 6 miles of property, which could be very cumbersome and I'm guessing costly. Step 2, if we got through all that and got that conceptual trail design, they call it information sharing and feasibility analysis. They review the right-of-way mapping, the location of the crossings, turnouts, the yards, the yards for turnouts of the actual trains themselves, the topography and sightline impediments, other safety considerations, whether protective barriers or safety improvements might be needed, crossings or anything of that nature. They look at existing operations and the potential impact on future operations. And as I alluded to, this freight line, as far as I can tell, is going to become live again. So that is, I believe, a given. And then other legal consideration of that dual use. So if we get past all that, then we have the trail design and development, where we have to have a design approval process with the Connecticut DOT. There's an entry permitting just to even get the land surveyor done. We'd have to have an agreement with the DOT and all the title holders. And then with the title holders, we'd actually either have to buy them out, or have a subordination with each one of them. So that there's a lot of work right there. Step 4, and according to the DOT people that I spoke with, would be then to submit to the Surface Transportation Board, which is STB, which is an independent federal agency charged with the economic regulation of various modes of transport, especially railroad. And they interact with Congress, executive agencies, state and local governments. They said that it would be a hard sell to have this dual combination within the same right-of-way. I did ask one of the representatives if they had ever heard of a rail running alongside the trail, or vice versa, the trail running alongside an existing railroad in the state of Connecticut, and they couldn't come up with one example. So I think that it's, again, there's always a possibility, but I think it's probably a long shot. So I tried to kind of come up with anticipated costs. The land, these are the unknowns, how much it would cost for the land survey to determine the track location within 6 miles, and identification of all of the crossings and other items, the title search of 6 miles of property, the conceptual design done by a licensed engineer and surveyor, clarification of all the safety elements that would be required, and final design inclusive of topography, drainage, roadway intersections, parking, fencing, safety structures, and permitting costs. I still have yet to get the actual permit application for the DOT. I don't even know if there is a cost. This is the thing that just keeps kind of going in circles. But the anticipated costs that are known, 6 miles of a 4-foot wide path, inclusive of construction costs, would be $1.5 million. And if that was a 10-foot wide path, that would be $3.6 million. That's just for the path itself, none of the design. And that doesn't include any bridge crossings or anything of that nature. And these numbers came from last year's LOTSIP estimates for the Connecticut River Access Project. And that's pretty much where I'm at as far as research. So,
Councilman Sferrazza?
Thank you, Lori. It sounds like you've been pretty busy putting this together.
hi.
I just want to, it's been a few months since this presentation. We had a discussion at the council meeting. I just want to go over it real quick. First off, the decision that the train is going to be going, my understanding is that's not a local or a state decision. That's a federal decision, correct? From the DLT?
I believe ultimately it is federal, but it really comes from CONDOT, Connecticut DOT.
Right.
But it is also the STB.
Right. And if you remember when we were, when the commissioner was here, the deputy commissioner, I asked the question, I said, when you have the ability to bring a rail line into an area, and businesses now have an option perhaps of using the rail car versus the tractor trailer trucks, I think the answer was that one rail car can handle 10 truckloads, and it could be more cost effective for that business. So the question was, if that were to be a reality, could that actually be an economic incentive for a business to want to build or purchase something when they have access to a rail line? And I think you said it. Tell me what you said when I asked you that back then.
I believe that it would be if somebody wanted to utilize the rail line, and there is a company out there that does want to use it, and I believe they have a contract to do so.
Yeah, there's other undeveloped property, though, where people, so if you have to make a decision, am I going to build here or am I going to build in Windsor? And I think the deputy commissioner talked about train lines like resources, like rivers. They are where they are. There's no new ones going in. So it's really, in terms of attracting business to town and trying to get them to add to our grand list, it's not a negative.
I don't believe so. I do think that it could be an economic incentive.
Right. And, as far as the trails go, there are other parts of town, specifically the Scannick River Park, where we have trails there. We have them on Town Farm Road, and there could be other places, but this money you're talking about, this is money that would come out of the Enfield taxpayer coffers, right? $1.5 million or $3.6 million to even explore, even if it could ever get done. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. And of course, you can entertain any questions. I just wanted to give an update to let you know where we were. We just didn't let it lay. I think what I would recommend at this juncture is Lori can, I think, just in a soft sell, look to see if there's anybody out there that could look at the easement issues about the distances, just get a cost of that. I didn't want to throw good money after bad. This is still a very important exercise to engage in because, as you all know, Representative Hall, she's setting up meetings. She's asked me to be involved, the mayor, other members on the council. There's always the contingency. Remember, they only renewed the freight line lease for a year. It's whizzing by. Months have already elapsed. So we'll be in a good position if it doesn't come to fruition. Then you're not battling to get the line probably abandoned. We probably would have the air of DOT and the feds at that juncture look for federal money, which is available, and look at it. But I wanted to make sure you were advised to say, okay, at this point, don't spend any money, find out what it would be. But we're still in a good position. And I've told Carol Hall, and I know there are others on the council and those running for council that are interested in this. So I think we'll just keep the two line approach, do it concurrently, and it's not for an action item tonight, but we wanted to update you, and Lori will keep our eye on it, and after I attend the next meeting, I think it's going to be with folks from Massachusetts in regard to the Long Meadow segment. We'll keep you updated.
And so did you submit the application, to be clear? Or is this what you have to do to submit the
I
application?
have yet to receive the application itself.
That's why I just want to make sure that we're not, again, we waited 25 years for this. There is no decision. And again, we're trying to work with a business to get this done. And I don't want to just, again, when it costs, that's fine. But again, I don't want to just abandon it when they haven't made the decision on extending the lease yet.
Correct. That's where we're still going both
right.
directions.
Yeah.
She'll attempt to get it. My suspicion is there isn't an application.
Right.
That they talked about it, about it's got to be around somewhere, and then they probably looked and it wasn't, because if it's never been done before, why would you have an application for it? We
Right.
talked about in-law
Why
apartments.
couldn't we be the first if we worked with a business and then put a trail together? And again, so again, again, look what they're doing in the West. They're building grids within their town. We should be
Absolutely.
doing the same. I know it's New England and it's harder because we're developed. That's how the developing trails in the West, we can do it here in town, and you can connect it with the trail and the two rivers. So I just don't want to abandon it. Yeah, again, when the cost comes, that's fine, but I mean, I don't want to give any indication.
Yeah, I don't
or-
think the cost should be it's just the cost to get to a point for them to say yes or no. I think it's important because I had suspected when they were here, this isn't going to happen adjacent to an existing rail.
Right.
All the places you've talked about, they take the rail out and we put in the trail. We wanted to make sure if it was a possibility, we looked at it. I think the cost of even getting an answer to that is too exorbitant, but she'll find out.
Yeah.
We'll see if there's an application and we'll see what the cost of a surveyor would be to check it. I think it's more important, to look and see what progress they've actually made on the rail, if any, or if they're going to, because if they just voluntarily abandon it, it'll be very easy for us. But we'll go down both tracks simultaneously.
So, sorry, we're running, you got a next piece? Go right ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say, I agree with you, and my mother always said, if you don't ask, you'll never know.
Right, exactly. Yep,
So-
great. Yep, appreciate it. And so now you, Amtrak, Eversource.
This is the I call it Eversource versus Amtrak. So this one is down around Depot Street. The Amtrak put up very severe fencing. I mean, about 8 feet with kind of barbs on top. And it's definitely very permanent. And that apparently has cut off all of the people to access the open space that Eversource owns on the north side of the tracks, where the tracks actually come into Enfield from across the river. So we did have a meeting with representatives from Eversource, and we kind of talked about things, and you were part of the conversation, and there is actually no physical, so we were trying to figure out how best we could get people to that open space. And they've cut off the trestle because at this point they're doing improvements to underneath the bridge, and they've got a lot of very expensive materials and equipment there, so they wanted to make sure that that was secure. But there is no apparent legal access for the public to go underneath that trestle on the Eversource property from Enfield property to the Eversource property. So I do think that that is one thing that we need to pursue, and I've put an email out to Kevin Whitcoast with Eversource to continue to pursue that option. But when we were meeting, we were thinking, how else can we get the people to that property? So we started thinking, well, if we go to the boat launch at the Parsons Road, we can maybe develop a trail that goes south. So again, Mr. Whitcoast offered that we could apply for a grant through Eversource. It's for like $1,500 just so we could create a little trail system and, a trailhead with, maybe a park bench or something. Unfortunately, the one thing that's actually causing me to delay this is that it has to be sponsored by a nonprofit. And there are no nonprofits in Enfield that are actually for conservation or environmental. So if there's any nonprofits out there that want to sponsor this, we'll do the work. We just need you to sponsor it.
So even the Conservation Commission couldn't do it?
They're not a nonprofit.
Good point.
At least I don't believe that they're considered one, so.
Yeah, I mean, that's make sure people are paying. I mean, we can actually open up access to the river.
Yeah, so I
Spending
was
a lot of
thinking-
money, and it's a grant from Eversource.
So I was thinking maybe looking at some of the dog groups because they could walk their dogs there.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So that's my next step at this point. And there's one person that I might ask with another nonprofit that is food oriented, but food and walking, that's always a good thing.
Fishing, right? Fishing, right?
So, so we're pursuing that as well. So, but I think that the hard part is going to be getting Amtrak to offer that easement. But quite honestly, if they don't do that, it's going to remain closed, and people are just going to go around. So I think it would behoove them to do that. It would be safer for them and for the citizens. So
Again, we just wanted to give you an update. When you're dealing with utilities or Amtrak, it's almost impossible. You literally hear when they say it takes an act of Congress. It takes an act of Congress to get a meeting or a phone call with them. You know, we've been working on the land up on the river. We're hopefully towards the end. It's been 10 to 12 years. We just wanted to get a little easement from Eversource up by the new water pollution control. It's a brand new $36 million facility just to put a little retaining wall. 3 years. We've had United States congressmen, U.S. senators. I think the only one that can get approval is Joe Biden himself. It's that difficult. But we keep on trudging away. But people would not understand or believe when you deal with utilities, they don't have to respond to us. They don't.
They don't.
Even when they go to federal court. I mean, they believe when Amtrak, they go back to the 1700s. They founded the country, and we're just interlopers. That's kind of what Amtrak thinks. And it's tough dealing with them. And luckily, I have such a great deal of patience that I'm able to deal with these folks and stay very calm and very composed.
We're getting good news. I mean, if someone out there, nonprofit, there's a grant that we can open up the Connecticut River, please contact Lori.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not a lot of money, and you're right.
It still won't access that property because it's still about 740
At least we start
feet of
again
railroad,
connecting the
but-
dots. So then, we can get Eversource on board. Then maybe they'll listen. Amtrak will listen.
Yeah, and like I said, if you don't ask, you'll never know.
I agree. Thank you, Lori. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Item 10, Town Attorney Report. All right, go ahead.
Through the mayor to the town manager. I just have a couple things. There's been some misinformation out there, so I was hoping you could do a little Finance 101 and explain why an organization as large as the town would carry debt, what our debt actually is made up of, and that it was the taxpayers that actually voted for it.
I wasn't prepared for an exam in finances, but luckily, I have a finance director. I don't know if
I
he's
think
here.
he snuck out.
Oh, everybody, right? Nelson, everybody's abandoning ship.
I'm here.
He's there.
I like to see him because otherwise I get confused. I thought, Ms. Riley. I don't know if John wants to pop his head in and give an answer. This comes up from time to time. He can answer better than I. All that I can say is that, I mean, with the federal government, they toss around debt versus, deficit interchangeably. Really, in the nation, we have, a multi-trillion dollar, you can't keep track of daily. I think it's 20 trillion we have in debt, and that means that's money that we owe that we don't have. And each year we have also a deficit, which means we don't have enough money, and we borrow it for our operating expenses in the United States government just to stay afloat. Enfield, like any other city or town in the state, has to have a balanced budget. It's by state law. When we go through the process every year, we do that. And I'll just tell you, we've had really good fiscal stewardship over the decades, not just the last few years, to the point where our policy is that we have to have a rainy day fund of about $13 million in the bank. Before we did our last budget, we had $39 million. And even after the expenditures in the CIP, which are coming back to us, we have over $30 million. So when you talk about debt, what you mean is, do we have obligations? Yes. It's like anybody probably in the audience at some time or the other. You have a mortgage, you pay on your house, you have a car loan, you pay that. But as long as you're making enough money in the family to pay for your obligations, you're above board. You're not paying negatively for the cost of operations. And that's what we've done in the town. People in the past, big ticket items such as the high school, the middle school, and water pollution control, those three items account for, we have bonds and obligations like any other city or community. Each year, I have to go before the Standard & Poor's. It's a 4-hour interrogation with John and staff for them to go through every facet, our annual report, all of our financial statements. It really is like an in-depth physical exam, including all of those things you don't like to go through in a physical exam, that they do with the town and make sure we're up to snuff. We did that this year. They know what our past borrowing is, and they encouraged us in this market, literally, to do the referendum questions we were doing because it's such a favorable market, and they want to see investment in your town. You know, our road, and I'll get off it because you can go on our website. We've put this on the manager's website for roads and every other thing, but our average index is in the 80s, being 100 is a new road, 0 is rubble. We invest in Enfield in our infrastructure, and that's what we've done over the years. When you don't, bonding agencies say that's great. It's like some people, they go and get their credit rating, and it's terrible. And they say, well, I don't owe any money. I don't have a debt on the house. They say, yeah, you have no credit history. You're not a good risk. So they like to see a balance. You don't want to go too far and owe too much. But as I like to say to the staff, we're like Goldilocks. This seat's too big. This seat's too small. This seat is just right. And I think that's where we are. John, thank you for showing up. If you want to add anything to that, you can, since you're the guru. John makes accounting fun.
That's because I can't remember names and I can't golf, so I have to make accounting fun. So, yeah, as of right now, we had, as of the end of 2020, we had about almost $103 million in debt outstanding. 81 million of that was for roads projects. From roads 2010. Actually, I think there was some left from 2005, 2010, and 2015 projects. The high school was about 21 million. That was outstanding as at the end of 2020. That amount will fluctuate because we'll be bonding some for the JFK project and some for the sewer plant coming up, as well as we'll be paying off because we fund some of it every year. And we have a very healthy fund balance. Our total general fund balance was about $39.9 million. Of that, some of which, about $8 million was restricted. So we had about $31.8 million, which is what they call unassigned, which is available for pretty much any use. The council, a previous council, had adopted a fund balance policy requiring us to maintain an unassigned fund balance of at least 9% of our projected expenditures. For 2022, our fund balance reserve requirement is about $13.8 million. So, we're about $18 million we have over that. So we are in very good fiscal shape. And as Mr. Bromson said, the Standard & Poor's rates us every year. Our rating is a AA stable. Stable is what their projection of the future for us is, and they expect us to remain at AA. AA, under their definition, it means that the obligor, that's us, the guys, the people who owe the money on the bonds, maintain the obligor's capacity to meet its financial commitments on the obligation is very strong. So they're looking at us, they're saying this is a town that's very able to meet their financial obligations, and these bonds that we're selling and any past bonds as well.
Thank you.
So
anyone else?
Anybody wants any follow-up or information, John, or from we can contact us and we can
Councilor
provide it.
Sparrow. John, sorry.
John, just, I don't know if I missed this, but AA, that's our rating?
AA is our rating.
So that correlates directly to what we have to pay when we go out to borrow money. So we get a more favorable rate because of the AA rating, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
I will tell you that it was interesting. Last year and this year, when we went out, we got the most favorable response. We had sometimes, it depends like anything else, how many bidders, right? We had, I think, over a dozen, and it's fascinating to do it. They open up a phone line and they bid all over the country and the world on our bonds and what percentage, and you can see what they're going to offer. And we got as low as any municipality in Connecticut, even those that some in the West Coast, the Gold Coast have, the pristine ratings. We got the same rate as they did to borrow. It was unprecedented. And as you know, last year we went out and renegotiated and saved about over a few years, about $1 million in because of our high standing in the rating industry. So we're very careful about it. And ultimately, I think it's a beautiful system. Is there really anything closer to true democracy than when the voters go out this fall, not only vote for who they want to represent them on the council, but whether or not they want to do a road referendum, whether they want to do roofs, whether they want to do recreation, or whether they want to have a regional public safety complex. It doesn't get any more direct than that. Their vote directly controls what we will borrow, and it's ultimately up to them. And I think if you want to think of all the other chaos that goes on, and they talk about government and watching it being made is like sausage, it isn't always pretty. Let me tell you something. You talk about those individuals who have given their lives and gone and fought for the right. That's the right of everyone here and at home to go out in November that first week and decide what their government will be and how the future quality of their town. They're deciding that. It doesn't get any more direct than that, and I think it's beautiful. Thank you, John.
Lori, quickly.
Through the mayor to the town manager, could you just add Spear Avenue to your list to check in? A resident contacted me and said the speeders are outrageous.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're all set. Item 10, Town Attorney Report.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, two things. First, last week, September 28, Governor Lamont issued Executive Order 14, which renewed through February 15, 2022, the declarations of public health and civil preparedness emergencies that were originally declared on March 10, 2021. So you may have seen this. Some of the executive orders were allowed to expire, but some were extended all the way through February 15 of next year, including, most importantly, for those assembled here tonight, one, the masking requirements in schools pursuant to Executive Order 9, Section 1, and the extension of municipal orders allowed under Executive Order 13A. There's been some commentary about masks in schools and whether those orders should be obeyed. My only observation is, although it was 25 years ago, I'm pretty sure I raised an oath when I was sworn into the bar to uphold the laws and the Constitution of the United States, not just the laws I liked, but all of the laws, and those executive orders have the force of law. And so as the town attorney, my recommendation would be that the town follow the laws. It's my simple observation as a member of the bar and an officer of the court. Second, I'd like to respond. Mr. Hopkins spoke quite eloquently about the ADUs, and it should come as no surprise that lawyers often disagree about things, especially statutory interpretation. So I would not concede the point made by Mr. Hopkins with regard to the deadlines. We can agree that the section he read into the record, which is part of Section 6, subsection 6BE in particular, provides that as of January 1, 2023, any existing regulation that doesn't comply with this new act shall be null and void. On that, we can agree. What's less clear is what happens with these rolling set of deadlines that started October 1 and include January 1, 2022. And the section that Mr. Hopkins did not read into the record states, this is Section 6, page 13 of 28, new, effective January 1, 2022, any zoning regulations adopted pursuant to Section 8-2 of the General Statutes as amended by this act shall, and then it lists 3 pages of requirements that are consistent with the spirit and intent of this new law. My peers in the Connecticut Association of Municipal Attorneys, some have construed this to call into doubt what would happen to existing regulations as of January 1, 2022. Reasonable lawyers can disagree about these things. It's not unusual when you have a new law that in our adversary process, lawyers who practice land use and want to see broader rights will go to court and argue for a broader interpretation. And on the other side, town attorneys will argue that they don't have these obligations. As your town attorney, I don't want to litigate these issues. I know for certain that January 2023, they'll be null and void. it's not really clear what's going to happen between now and then. I can tell you for sure, if the town opts out, you don't have to worry about it. And so that's why I recommended, that's why I provided, that's the basis of my advice to you all here tonight. And that's all I had, Mr.
Any
Mayor.
questions for the town attorney? I'm just curious, so on the mask, on the box, it says it doesn't protect you from what they're saying, I mean, which is interesting, and I'm not asking you for any lawyer advice, but it does seem to contradict with
I'm sorry, all I can give you is lawyer advice.
I know, but it does seem to contradict where the parents at least have some, I understand from, again, the law says, the executive order says what it is, but the actual executive order telling what to do, the box that, or the mask is saying it doesn't protect you what we're saying it's supposed to protect you from. So what, I guess, so the question is, what, if a child gets sick wearing a mask, what recourse would a parent have?
That's not a question I can answer for you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry.
All right. Yeah. Go ahead.
Mr. Talberg, executive orders, they're not recommendations, they're in fact law. And my understanding is a violation is a Class D felony.
Yeah, the way it works is we have these emergency preparedness orders. It's actually legislation that can be invoked, and so the executive becomes the legislative. It's a delegation because the executive in our tripartite system of government enforces the laws. So we have this mechanism in place when there's an emergency, and they are valid and enforceable. Some of them have been challenged in court, not with much success. And so you're correct, Chief Sferaza, Counselor. They have the force of law.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Moving on to item 11, report of special committees. Hearing none, old business, item 12, A stays on the table, B stays on the table, C stays on the table, and D, item 12A through D on page 1. Do I have a motion to remove item E?
Motion.
By Councilor Mangini. Second?
Second.
By Councilor Muller. All those in favor, remove from the table by show of hands. Opposed, abstentions, 11 in favor, 0 against. So it is removed from the table. Any questions? Anyone from the online?
All set, Mike.
Okay. Councilor Bosco?
And a vote, this is for the,
Correct, this is the ADU. Do you have any questions?
yeah, so if you're, this is going to be an against if you're against, correct?
So,
I guess I'm
mean,
like brain fog still.
You have to be for to opt out.
I got to be for to opt out.
Yes.
So I would, so B,
Yeah, so we haven't got to the vote yet. I'm asking if you have any questions.
yeah, well, my question is I need to know how the, I don't want to say against and then before, and so I just need to know a vote out is for.
Correct.
Okay, that's it, thank you.
Anyone else have any comments or questions? Hearing none, roll call, please, Sheila.
Counselor Muller.
For.
Counselor Riley. 4. Counselor Safraza.
For.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco.
4.
Counselor Sakala.
I'm sorry, was this to just take it off the table or to vote on it?
Actually, we actually took it off the table already. And I apologize, Sheila, I actually have to read the resolution.
Okay.
Yep, so,
Thank you.
sorry about that. So everyone, hold on. Whereas the Planning and Zoning Commission, PZC, has recommended that the town opt out of the Public Act number 2129, accessory dwelling units, also known as ADU provisions. Whereas in order to opt out of the ADU provisions, the town council must hold a public hearing subsequent to the P&Z public hearing, gain a 2/3 vote in favor of opting out. Whereas the town council held a public hearing on September 20th, 2021, whereas there are legitimate concerns with the proposed ADU regulations, now therefore be it resolved the town council vote to opt out of Public Act number 2129, section 6F for the ADU provisions.
So moved.
By Councilor Muller.
Second.
By Councilor Sakala. So any discussion? Sorry? Hearing none, roll call, please, Sheila.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Riley. 4. Counselor Surprise.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco.
4.
Counselor Sakala.
Against.
Counselor Crisati.
I'm against, and I wish that, that the zoning regulations were presented to us before this was voted.
Bob, it's a 4 against, Bob.
I said against.
Counselor Hemler.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Mangini.
Against.
That's 8 in favor, 3 against.
2/3 majority, so the motion passes. Thank you, Sheila. We move to item 13, new business. Item A, consent agenda, there is none. Item 13B, a town council appointed, there are none. Item 13C, town manager appointed, council approved, there are none. Item 13D, P&Z commission appointed, council approved, there are none. Items for discussion, A's 1, 2, and 3, move to miscellaneous. Item 14B, under items for discussion, appointment, town council appointed, there are none. Item C, appointments, town manager appointed, council approved, there are none. Item D, appointments, P&Z commission approved, council appointed, there are none. E, F, G, H, I, J, and K have all been moved to miscellaneous. And L has been moved to miscellaneous. Now, under items for under miscellaneous, items A1, which is request transfer funds for the Enfield Beautification Committee of $8,000. Item A2, request for transfer of grant funds for Family Resource Center of $7,500. And A3, request for transfer of donated funds to Family Resource Center of $10,000. All on the consent agenda. Is any discussion? Hearing none by simple show of hands. A favor? Against? Abstentions? That's all 11 in favor, 0 against. Sheila, for the consent agenda. Move on to item E. Request transfer of funds for fiscal year 21 to acquire Enfield Express of $600,000. Whereas resolved in accordance with Chapter 6, Section AF of the Town Charter, the following transfer is hereby made. Two Enfield Express buildings from the COVID fund of $600,000, from the COVID-19 fund revenue grants, COVID federal of $600,000. Certified the above funds are available as stated on September 28th, 2021 by John Wilcox, our Director of Finance, and approved by Christopher Bromson, our Town Manager.
So moved.
By Councilor Muller.
Second.
By Councilor Mangini. I mean, pretty straightforward. I mean, you gave
It
a
is,
presentation
Mr. Mayor,
last
members
week.
of the council. I think due to your vision in looking at this a couple of years ago and leasing it with the option to buy brings us here today. At the height of COVID, we, like everyone else, were trying to find new and innovative ways to deliver services to our residents in a safe way to them and our employees. We knew that the bank one over at Enfield Street was for sale. We went in and looked with counselors, I'll never forget, with Cindy Mangini and Donna Susak in particular, who walked through it and said, buy it. And they recommended that, and their standing in the council was such that people listened closely, and it's been a great success. We have since, as part of our building consolidation plan, moved tax and assessors there, clearing up space. As you heard earlier in the evening, we're jettisoning buildings that are expensive and costly and older to keep, and we're getting replacements that make sense, that fit in with the theme of the town. It's adjacent to Town Hall. Seniors have been able to use it to pay taxes. People drive through to pay and get their dog licenses, and a variety of other services that we're adding all the time. But more importantly, I think the little secret part of it that really people wouldn't have realized is it sits on almost 2 acres. And that 2 acres we now control so that the Higgins Park, which is under construction, you've seen the playscape go up. There'll be hopefully after action tonight, groundbreaking for the outdoor basketball court. You've already funded, because we do pay as we go in a lot of projects. Higgins Park was one of them. That 2 walking trails, not 1, but 2, 1/4 of a mile and 1/3 of a mile. For all of you who like to walk, come right to Town Hall. Your kids can play in the playscape. Teenagers can play basketball, and you can walk on the track. That groundbreaking should take place, and we should have it in hopefully fall, early winter. But what comes with that? People congesting now to Town Hall like they do for our market. They're having to go further out to walk for parking spaces. What a problem to have. But lo and behold, because we're purchasing that this evening with federal money, we will have about 100 new parking spaces, which we'll do in the fall or early winter, so there'll be plenty and abundant parking to come and enjoy the facility. And again, in the next month, we'll be consolidating. You also leased with an option to buy the St. Adalbert's Gymnasium. We finalized with the owner. That's going to be 9,000 square foot indoor for tournament basketball, pickleball, volleyball, indoor walking track for people in the winter, a climbing wall, stages for theater, all on town green, all pay as we went. We paid for it. So I think it's a testament to the vision of the council and your stewardship of the resources. And so I think it's exciting to know for our residents, this is being completely paid for by the United States government because we had the forethought to do this for COVID, and it was eligible. And so will the $450,000 to put the parking in. So I commend the council, and I hope that you will support it. It's one of the first items we're bringing forward under the American Recovery. As I promised to you, we gave the template. It's online for anybody who would like to see our recommendation for the rest of the funds and also the usages, and then we'll bring each project to you to explain it for your consideration. And I know a young lady had asked earlier in the evening about our funding for American Recovery in the school. Ours is separate. Ours is $12.9 million over 2 years. We've received $6.3. The school department is more than that, but it's eligible for all of the projects that you discussed, and we'll be coming forward. Again, we have a study group. We're working with the superintendent of schools on a joint project for the athletic fields at the high school that will make everyone very proud in this town. So we'll have that in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Any questions? Hearing none, roll call, please, Sheila.
Counselor Muller?
4.
Counselor Riley? 4. Counselor Sofraza?
4.
Deputy Mayor Souza?
4.
Counselor Ungary?
4.
Counselor Bosco? Counselor Bosco? Counselor Sakala?
4.
Counselor Crisati?
4.
Counselor Hemler?
4.
Mayor Ludwig?
4.
Counselor Mangini?
4.
It's 10 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Thank you, Sheila. Item F, under miscellaneous, request for transfer of funds for fiscal year '22 to acquire the Enfield Express at $125,000. Resolved in accordance with Chapter 6, Section 8F of the Town Charter, the following transfer is hereby made. To the Enfield Express buildings from the COVID-19 fund of $125,000, from the COVID-19 fund revenue grants and COVID federal of $125,000. Certified the above funds are available as of September 28, 2021 by John Wilcox, our Director of Finance, and approved by our Town Manager, Chris Bromson. So moved. By Councilor Muller.
Second.
By Councilor Ungary. Chris just explained. Hearing none, roll call, please. Roll call, please.
Counselor
Sheila.
Muller?
4.
Counselor Riley? 4. Counselor Sofraza?
4.
Deputy Mayor Souza?
4.
Counselor Ungary?
4.
Counselor Bosco? Counselor Bosco? Counselor Sakala?
4.
Counselor Crisati?
4.
Counselor Hemler?
4.
Mayor Ludwig?
4.
Counselor Mangini?
4.
It's 10 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Thank you, Sheila. Item G under miscellaneous, request transfer of funds of fiscal year '21 for the fire protection charge mediation. Resolved in accordance with Chapter 6, Section A of the Town Charter, the following transfer is hereby made. From the unallocated water sewage of $1,236,934 from the general fund unallocated charges revenue appropriated fund balance of $636,934, which is a grand total of $1,236,934. Certified the above funds are available as of September 28, 2021 by Director of Finance John Wilcox and approved by our Town Manager Chris Bromson.
So moved.
By Councilor Muller, seconded by Councilor Mangini. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call, please, Sheila.
Counselor Muller?
4.
Counselor Riley? 4. Counselor Sofraza?
4.
Deputy Mayor Souza?
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco, I believe, stepped away.
Yes.
Counselor Sakala.
4.
Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Hemler.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Mangini.
4.
That's 10 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Thank you, Sheila. Item H under miscellaneous, request for transfer of funds for fiscal year '22 for the fire protection charge mediation. Resolved in accordance with Chapter 6, Section AF of the Town Charter, the following transfers hereby made from the two unallocated charges, water sewage at $370,000, from the revenue appropriated fund balance at $370,000. Certified the above funds are available as of September 29, 2021. By our Director of Finance, John Wilcox, and approved by our Town Manager, Chris Bromson.
So moved.
By Councilor Muller.
Second.
By Councilor Mangini. Hearing, no questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Riley. 4. Counselor Sofraza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Sakala.
4.
Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Hemler.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Mangini.
4.
10 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Thank you, Sheila. Moving on to item I, under miscellaneous, resolution to abolish a one part-time youth center assistant position in order to fund the proposed pay rate adjustment to remaining 3 positions in youth and family services. Whereas the fiscal year 21-22 budget includes funding for 4 part-time youth center assistant positions, whereas a $1 per hour wage increase has been proposed for the part-time youth center assistant position, whereas in order to fund the proposed wage increase, one of the 4 part-time youth center assistant positions will have to be abolished. Now therefore be it resolved that the number of part-time youth center assistant positions will be reduced from 4 to 3. Be it further resolved that in accordance with Chapter 5, Section 14 of the Town Charter, the Enfield Town Council does hereby approve the wage adjustment for the remaining 3 youth center assistant positions by increasing the current wage rate by $1 per hour for a starting rate of $14 an hour, submitted on 9/14/2021 by our Director of Human Resources, Steve Belinda.
So moved.
By Councilor Muller. Seconded by Councilor Mangini.
Kasha Perciello, our assistant manager, is available if you have any questions.
Hi, Kasha. I don't know if you want to make any comments?
No, I think the resolution is self-explanatory. One position is just being eliminated to increase the pay of the other ones. That'll bring us in line with other towns nearby.
Got it. Any questions for our Assistant Town Manager? Hearing none, roll call, please, Sheila.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Riley. 4. Counselor Sofraza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Sakala.
4.
Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Hemler.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Mangini.
4.
10 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Thank you, Sheila. Item J under miscellaneous. Resolution referring to the proposed acquisition of land located at 90 Alden Ave to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Whereas the town of Enfield, also known as the town, intends to purchase the gymnasium located at 90 Alden Ave. Whereas pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 8-24, the town council will refer this acquisition to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a report in conformance with the requirements of Connecticut General Statute 8-24. Now therefore be it resolved that the acquisition listed above is referred to the Planning and Zoning Commission in conformance with the requirements of the Connecticut General Statute 8-24, submitted by our Town Manager's Office on September 24th, 2021.
So moved.
By Councilor Muller, seconded by Councilor Mangini. This is the gym that... Yep.
Yes, good evening. As I alluded to earlier, this is part of the Higgins Park. It is both the 2 walkways and the basketball court that you've previously funded. Our concern and what the difficulty's been over the summer, as you well know, and why the playscape installation was delayed and also the splash pad, it's very difficult to get consistency from the contractors. There's, costs have gone up. Quite high availability of certain materials, their availability, some of them being, as we found out, crews from Louisiana who had come down with COVID. So we're running into that. That's why we did a lot of these projects before the budget. We did them before we adopted the budget because I knew there's going to be a long lead time when everybody woke up and things were reopening again. So that's why we did them separately. I put to you the fact that Donald Nunes is going to give a little overview. This is a very well-known contractor who's done very good work for the town for many decades, so we have a real comfort level. Also, not to besmirch anybody, but it isn't rocket scientists. Sometimes you want to go out to bid for boilers and complicated trucks and equipment. This is a basketball court, and it's just the pavement. So we know how many feet times the cost per inch or per foot, like our roads. The budgets they came in were within the budget that Mr. Nunes had figured out for these two projects. So I feel very comfortable moving forward so that we will not only get them done, we'll get them done this fall. If we wait, the competition and glut that's going to occur from all the other jobs, even quite a few we're doing in the spring, I don't think we'd be able to get it done. And we have, as you well know, we're working to get Brainerd Park, their field and complex in, as well as Potter Hollow, and in June doing the high school. So if we can knock this out in the fall and let our residents enjoy it over the next few months before the heavy snows come down, I think we should do it. Donna, would you like to add to the specifics of it for the council and folks at home?
Just sit tight. Great explanation. I didn't want to cut you off, but we're on the actual 90 Alden Ave reference to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Yeah. Great explanation. Well, so Donald, sit tight. We'll be right there to the next resolution.
Well, then that's simple. That's the new basketball tournament facility. We're just referring to get permission to buy it when it's.
You're on a roll. I don't want to cut you off.
Well, we're buying and selling a lot. We're like.
Any questions on the gym at all at St. Adalbert's gym? Roll call, please, Sheila.
Councilor Muller.
4.
Councilor Riley. 4. Councilor Sofraza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Souza.
4.
Councilor Ungary.
4.
Councilor Sakala.
4.
Councilor Crisati.
4.
Councilor Hemler.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Councilor Mangini.
4.
10 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Thank you, Sheila. Item K under miscellaneous, resolution waiving the bid requirements for the basketball court at Higgins Park. Whereas the council has determined that it is in the interest of the town that a basketball court be installed at Higgins Park, that such basketball court will be open for use for the fall of 2021. Whereas conducting a competitive bidding process would add significant delays to the project, would delay the opening until the summer of 2022. Now therefore be it resolved that in accordance with Chapter 5, Section AF, Paragraph D of the Enfield Town Charter, the Enfield Town Council does hereby determine that it's against the best interest of the town to require competitive bidding for the construction of a basketball court at Higgins Park, submitted on October 1st, 2021 by Donald Nunes, our Director of Public Works.
So moved.
Councilor Muller, seconded by Councilor Mangini. Great explanation. Donald?
Yeah, well, I won't repeat it for the suffering folks here listening. I will just say, though, I'm so excited about the project that's why it can't be contained. And we're going to be doing, a week from Friday, 2 ribbon cuttings for the basketball courts we just completed at Alcorn and Lafayette. And we'll invite the public and persons to come. And you know what? I think Washington could learn from our handbook about how to do infrastructure. If the president and the Congress would like to know how to really build things and get things done, they can come to Enfield, because we're getting things built.
Well, Donald, that's a tough segue, but you're welcome, sir.
Yeah, it's nearly impossible, Mayor, I'll tell you that. So, the contractor who is doing Lafayette Park is available to even start on Wednesday, pending the outcome of tonight's resolution. So things are working out well, and they also said that, again, it would be within the budget that we've set. So it's a win-win to have them. They're already mobilized in town, be able to take them right from Lafayette and from Alcorn and just bring them right over there. They're ready to do it and they're ready to move on. So that's what I have.
Any questions for Donald, our Director of Public Works? I agree, it's great because it's tough getting contractors. This is great news.
It certainly is right now. Again, materials and everything else aside, just finding the people to do the work is a challenge now.
Thank you, sir. Hearing no questions, roll call, please.
Councilor Muller.
4.
Councilor Riley. 4. Councilor Sofraza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Souza.
4.
Councilor Ungary.
4.
Councilor Sakala.
4.
Councilor Crisati.
4.
Councilor Hemler.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Councilor Mangini.
4.
10 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Thank you, Sheila. Item L under miscellaneous, resolution waiving the bid requirements for a walkway at Higgins Park. Whereas the council has determined that it is in the interest of the town that a walkway be installed at Higgins Park as part of the master plan, and that such walkway could be open for the use of fall 2021, whereas conducting a competitive bidding process would add significant delays to the project, which would delay opening until the summer of 2022. Now therefore be it resolved in accordance with Chapter 5, Section 8, Paragraph D of the Enfield Town Charter, the Enfield Town Council does hereby determine that it's against the best interest of the town to require competitive bidding for the construction of a walkway at Higgins Park, submitted on October 1st, 2021 by Donald Nunes, our Director of Public Works.
So moved.
By Councilor Muller, seconded by Councilor Mangini. Yeah. I mean, I know you already gave the explanation, but this is.
Yes, and I would just tell everybody here and at home, 3 more weeks for the Enfield Market. It's been a great success. We have many wonderful vendors, music, ice cream for the children. Come out and join us. And then hopefully we'll be announcing, we're optimistic that it'll be moving into the Enfield Square again for the winter season as well. We'll keep you posted.
Yeah, and just so you know, some projects, if we do actually get the walking path open, there's some projects that we might do for winter where people actually can use it. So again, we're moving all year round, not just in the nice weather. So some more to come from our leisure. Councilor Sakala.
Thanks. So the walking path is the reason, the big one, we don't have a softball field down there. And we were super gung-ho about tearing down that softball field, and we did it really quickly. I don't know why a request for bid or a bid request didn't go out months ago on this. And I know this is one of those things where I repeat myself over and over and over again because I was not in favor of the way Higgins Park is now being created. I'm not in favor of this bid waiver. It should have been more planful. It should have been done months ago. So I'm not going to give you crap on the one before, but this one's not okay.
And again, it's changing circumstances. We were doing so many projects with Public Works. That's why, truthfully, we have a description under the Novak report to add an additional administrator because they're just overwhelmed. They have over 80 projects, and they're going from one to the next. It's been a Herculean task to try to get all the fields open. I understand, and being the one that's on them every day calling to say, when is it done, why isn't it? When I determined the fact that we couldn't get anybody interested to do it, I said, well, let's go this route. But your remarks are understood.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, roll call, please, Sheila.
Councilor Muller.
4.
Councilor Riley. 4. Councilor Sofraza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Councilor Ungary.
4.
Councilor Sakala.
Against.
Councilor Crisati.
4.
Councilor Hemler.
4.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Councilor Mangini.
4.
9 in favor, 1 against, no abstentions.
Thank you, Sheila. Moving on to item 16, public communication. Does anyone like to speak for the council? Anyone like to speak for the council? Welcome. Hi there. Welcome.
Bone. Hello?
Yep.
Hi, Chris D'Antonio, 18 Montana Road. There's been a lot of good discussion tonight, and I feel like I just wanted to make a point of a few intersecting points. We had some points about democracy and hearing the voice of the people and these great referendums we have this coming November. I am excited to be able to provide my direct input. We've had some comment about the questionability of the recent cannabis ordinance that was passed by this town council last month. And then there's also comments about respectful appreciation for taking the time to push back the vote on the accessory apartment provision. Provide more time for in this case, for understanding. So I kind of just want to circle back to the cannabis ordinance. I was here at the public hearing last month. Very much a mixed bag. If you recall, there was a lot of mix in terms of support against. Mostly, we're talking about cannabis legalization, which we know has passed in the state of Connecticut. Which wasn't what the discussion was about, but it was about businesses, cannabis businesses in Enfield, not even just dispensaries or growers. Sorry, I don't recall the formal term, but just all businesses, even a delivery business that wanted to open up in Enfield. So again, just the intersection of all those topics that were brought up. I just wanted to bring to attention. I hadn't heard it brought up in a past meeting, so I apologize if it has. Very informal, granted. If you guys are members of the Enfield CT Open Forum on Facebook, I just want to put on record this very informal, and I won't judge this person for their spelling. This poll, they said, let's do a quick poll. Your want the dispensary. Don't mind the spelling or the grammar. Do not care either way. And do not want dispensary. Right? 3 options. Pro, neutral, and against. 1,167 votes, you want the dispensary. 200 votes, do not care either way. 68 votes, do not want the dispensary. That's well under 10%. This obviously isn't,
15 seconds, sorry.
being submitted for scientific evidence, but just something to think about in keeping, rushing things to a vote, making a vote without, actually trying to take the public into account. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak for the council? Welcome.
Thank you. Matthew Schmidt, 55 North Main. I just wanted to address or talk about the legal ramifications of going against the mask mandate. One issue I want to bring up is this country has had bad laws in the past that affected people poorly, and it took people fighting those laws to get them changed. So I think you should look at that. The other thing, I don't know if the town attorney has looked at the PrEP Act. I know it's a federal law that provides broad immunity to agencies such as municipal and state agencies in implementing countermeasures, covered countermeasures, which masking is one. So I don't know if that's an option, if you were to have a different mask policy of some sort. If that would trump that, I would hope you guys would look into that. I tried to look into it. There's a number of amendments to the PrEP Act, one of which actually allows veterinarians to give COVID vaccines, even though we're reminded that we are not a horse. They're still allowed to do that, but there's a lot of amendments there. Like I said, maybe the town attorney can look into that. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else like to speak for the council?
Bob T. Katz.
Welcome.
Every poll across the country runs for marijuana usage, 63 to 83%. Massachusetts was 83%. So I don't know where the 6 of you, where you sit, but we might as well change the town from Enfield to Mayberry because there's no crime here. So let's change the name. We could have another name, but Mayberry fits.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak for the council? Anyone else like to speak for the council? Declare public communications closed. Is there any council communications? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion. By Councilor Mangini, seconded by Councilor Ungary. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? 10 in favor, 0 against. Sheila, good night, everyone. Thank you. Have a great night.